Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, February 5th, 2024. This is a workshop meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. We are live in City Hall, Commissioners Room, second floor. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're going to start off with roll call. Commissioner Don Preston is absent. Commissioner Tony Sharp.
Here.
Commissioner Ed Shranowski.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Bunky Markert.
Here.
Mayor Stan Mills. We have a quorum and are able to formally conduct business today. I'd also like to introduce staff that helps put this meeting together. Starting on left to right is City Secretary Ann Womack. I'm going to have you raise your hand. We kind of, did you? I can't see it from here. Interim City Manager Evan Miller. City Solicitor Alex Burns. Let's see. We have Vicki Hatton over there. Bookkeeping. I don't know your official title. I don't have to learn it. Judge Renee Bennett is over there. Donna Moore. Lynn Cohen, Communications Specialist. Let's see, Chief Keith Banks, Police Department. Peter Matlow, Henry Matlows, new Public Works Director. Who am I missing? Ever got everybody? Nope, he's with Tyler Industries. He'll be on board shortly. Thank you all for being here. We want to make a few notes. One is I want to thank everybody that's here in person today. Appreciate you coming here. As you know, if you've been here, that at appropriate times during the meeting, we ask for citizen feedback, and that would be a time appropriate for you to raise your hand, get recognized, come forward to the center microphone here or the lectern and be recognized, state your name and your relationship to the city so that we can get your input. I'd also like to thank everybody that's watching virtually that couldn't be here in person today. Also like to remind everybody that support documents, those are documents that support our individual agenda items when they're ready a sufficient time in front of an agenda meeting, then they are embedded into the agenda and accessible on the city's website. Would like to make note that because we are still in discussion with DENREC over Deauville Beach lease renewal, we are deleting item old business B in entirety. That has to do with Deauville Beach parking situation. We also will not entertain any discussion on Deauville Beach during the parking topic, which is new business F, discuss parking rates and desire for any changes for the 2024 season. With that, I do, let's see, I'll cross off that. Would like to recognize correspondence. Correspondence that's received a sufficient amount of time in front of a meeting is also embedded in the agenda, and we have 3 letters from Carolyn Diefendorfer, Nettie Green, and Dave Diefendorfer, and we'll get to those later. With that, we're going to move right along to the city manager's report. Alex? You're the city manager. You still are. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners, and members of the public. Demolition of the old Beach Patrol facility will begin in earnest this week. Increased construction noise and vibration should be expected in the area. Demolition is anticipated to take about 5 days, and when initial demolition is complete, about 25% of the old facility will remain in place while workers transition utilities. Working hours at the construction site will be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and during the off-season, work may also take place from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays. A reminder that as part of the city's annual winter maintenance, Sussex Tree will prune many trees throughout town from February 12th through the 20th. The streets on which work will take place are listed in the announcements section on the city's homepage. Finally, the water department will flush hydrants in the North Shores area on Wednesday. Homeowners have been notified about precautions they should take on the day hydrants are flushed throughout the North Shores Board of Governors office. And that's all I have to report, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions of the commissioners? Commissioner Sharp?
Yes, could you refresh my memory? It's my failure here. The status of the diorama MOU with our partners
Sure.
and the time frame. Is it all signed, sealed, and delivered?
It is.
Okay.
Yep. And the term of the MOU is through the end of April, and the diorama is currently on display as well.
I've seen it. It looks great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? If not, we'll move on now to the city solicitor's report. Alex?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a brief update on the quiet title action relating to certain property within the city. There is a hearing in the Court of Chancery in Georgetown on February 22nd at 10 a.m. And I'll be filing an affidavit stating that the city has taken steps to complete all the notice requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's in reference to 2 lots the city owns, Boardwalk side of the Pennsylvania Railroad. And I do want to reiterate, because there's been misunderstanding from the beginning, that the city has no plans for that property. Correct? We're just trying to clean up the title of it. Thank you very much. With that, we're going to move to old business. The first item of old business is to discuss a request by the Rehoboth Beach Public Library Board to modify deed restrictions relating to the land commonly known as the location of the Rehoboth Beach Public Library, and more specific, described as noted in the agenda, certain tax parcel map numbers. How I would like to approach this today is be fairly methodical about identifying the lots and the property and the building at the start. And then I want to turn it over to Alex to review the procedure that the city transferred certain lands to the public library and the conditions imposed on that deal, such that if the library were to cease to operate as a library, certain things would take place. And we'll use this slideshow here to do that. This is a slideshow that we showed back in, January, I think, okay, that you helped me put together. December. After that, we'll turn it over to the library if they want to explain their proposal to us to flip-flop the building, if you will, and what the proposed conditions would be for a new agreement. And then we'll open it up for discussion of the commissioners and discussion to members of the public. Again, this is in fact, it says right there, made November 6th, 2023. That's the front picture of the library. I'm just going to go through these quickly. Kay, if you want to say anything, you let me know. Again, just the orientation at the bottom is Rehoboth Avenue. The library is there. You've got the library entrance is on the left, and the Cape Henlopen Senior Center to the rear. This is just trying to illustrate that there were 3 lots originally, and I want to ask Alex to help clarify some of these. My nomenclature here is merely east.
Track A, which is also lot 76, and Track B, which is lot 74 and 72. So I think the easiest way to think about it is just 76, 74, and 72. 76 is the lot closest to Summer House.
76 is what I call the west. Okay.
Correct. And that was originally the city's lot. Approximately 30 years ago, the city agreed to conditionally convey that lot to the library subject to certain conditions. And now there's a proposal from the library to essentially release the restrictions on 76 and place similar conditions on 72 and 74.
So west is lot 76, 74 is the center lot, lot 72 is the east lot. Okay. Let me go through Kay, again, if you want to say anything, you come up and speak up. Again, this is from last time. The notations here is that an option for using a portion of the library would have been this configuration. They deemed it was possible but not best. Option C was to use the east and center portions, which would be lot 72, 74. And this was the best option. So what that would do is what that would do is they were asking to flip-flop the property so that they could lease out this area, lot 76, to another business, in which case the library would cease to operate in that lot 76, correct? You can come on up. Do you want to add anything?
The only thing.
Clarify.
Kay Wheatley, president of the Rehoboth Beach, Rehoboth Beach, I started to say chamber. Rehoboth Beach Public Library. The only thing I wanted to clarify, when you say lease to another business, we are not looking to, we don't have anything in mind except that we want to keep it something that's complementary to library services. So like an educational institution or something like that. The plan is not to lease it like to a restaurant or retail, some commercial thing, business.
Would it be accurate to say then, give you the ability to lease it to for use not as a library?
Correct.
That section, okay. Alex, if you would, let's go ahead. We've identified the lot acquired from the city, and because they've identified they want to flip-flop it, as we just mentioned, certain conditions kick in. If you would identify those conditions.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So the first condition would be that if those parcels, 74 and 72, are proposed as the new parcels for the restrictions, if those parcels stop being used as a library, they would transfer back to the city. The prior agreement used the word revert, but in speaking with Jay, who represents the board, transfer would be more appropriate here. And the other option would be that the city would have an option of first refusal. If the library wished to sell those properties, the city would have the option to buy the 3 lots minus the price of the unimproved land of 72 and 74. So the library would offer a discounted sale price to the city if the city wanted to.
Well, you've gotten ahead to their proposal. I wanted to review the conditions that if that lot 76 no longer is used as a library, there are certain conditions, right?
That's right. It would automatically transfer back to the city.
Okay. So do you want to explain the flip-flop and the proposal, or since your attorney isn't here, do you want our solicitor who worked with your attorney to try to
Well,
I cut him off, but explain.
couple things. One, I also wanted to introduce a couple board members, James Berry and Tom. I always have trouble saying your last name. Wotek. You guys got it. To just clarify, and I may need you to ask the question again because I went off base. To just clarify, the intentions of the library, we had a task force that was made up of community members. And they learned a lot about libraries, services, all of that. They then sat down and determined there were 3 options. One was to just make the library on the west lot. We decided that was obviously too small to be able to conduct the services that we would like to conduct downtown. Then they looked, as the mayor said, at the center lot and the west lot, and it wasn't as feasible. The costs were going to go up because of entrances and like that. Also, it did not give us full access to the upstairs. They ended up recommending to the board the east lot and the center lot, because that also gives the library access to the upstairs, plus those 2 lots downstairs. What we are hoping that the town will agree to switch the agreement from the west lot to the east and center lots, or 72 and 74, or tract B. And our attorney has already been working with your attorney, Jay and Alex. Jay could not be here today because his daughter is in the middle of scholarship interviews in Tennessee, and he's with her. And so that is their intent, or that is our intent, is to switch to there. To me, the advantage is twofold. One, the city is getting, right now, according to the agreement, you would get the value of 1 lot should the library leave. 2, if we switch, you get the value of 2 lots instead of 1 lot. The library is willing to make that concession, or whatever you want to call it, agreement, simply because, 1, it's what's best for the library. 2, as you all know, there has been a lot of questioning as to whether or not we were leaving downtown. That fairly well, hopefully, helps guarantee that we will always, as we have always planned, to stay downtown. The resolution that Tom read when he was president back, I think about this time last year, specified that we intended to keep both locations, or keep this location and build a new one on Warrington Road to service the rest of our patrons. So what we're asking is for the conditions, and I think the attorneys, and Alex, please jump in here. I think you and Jay decided what was easiest was to keep the agreements pretty much as they were written in 1990-something, 92, I think, except for the identification of what lots we were talking about. Is that fair?
That's fair, yeah. Jay told me that his direction was to keep things similar to how they were originally. There's the 1992 agreement and the 93 deed. It's a little convoluted the way it came about. It seems to me that there was the 1992 agreement between the city and the library regarding the restrictions, and then those were memorialized in the actual deed itself in 93.
And the reason we directed Jay, the library board directed Jay to do that, was because we didn't want anybody to get any idea that we were trying to change anything other than the lots, and to go from 1 lot to 2 lots, so that we can have the library services on lots, the center and east lot, or 72 and 74, or tract B. They're all the same. So that's what we're intended. I don't know who wrote the original agreement, but we've tried to stick as closely to what was there as we could, but still achieve switching the requirements from west to east and center.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to do my best to try to summarize this a little bit. The city some time ago gave this west lot, the 76, to the library with certain stipulations that if that particular property ceased to be used as a library, then certain conditions would kick in, including giving it back to the city, right? Or giving us right of first refusal to buy it, and the value of the lot with the unimproved building that was on it at the time has to be considered as part of the deal, right? So what the library is trying to do is do a flip-flop so that they can maintain a smaller footprint of the library and not have to fulfill those conditions by selling the property or giving the lot 76 back to the city. Instead, they would like to work out a new agreement that preserves the city's right, because that's one of the things that we're hopeful of, is we want to preserve the city's right and then preserve the value of the properties, and in a way try to promote that continuation of a library operating on that site in total, but not necessarily as part of Lot 76. So do you want to do any deeper down analysis of the proposal by Jay? You're our city solicitor, so we're looking for you to say this is an equal deal, or is leaning toward the library a little bit, or whatever.
Sure, thanks, Mayor. I guess I should just add that in the prior agreement, the deed restrictions were slightly different than the proposed deed restrictions. Under the prior agreement, the right of first refusal included a discount to the city involving the value of the unimproved land and the library structure on top of the land. And in the proposal, it is only the unimproved land. But I guess the other side to that is that there's 2 lots now. So the land's probably much more valuable than the improvements thereon. And then there is also some conditional language proposed which tracks the 92 and 93 agreement that I should just quickly go over. If the city elects to not exercise the right of first refusal, the library may sell the parcels, and the city receives the value for the parcels it owns. So up until today, it's been Lot 76. The city would receive that value. It's proposed that if the library was to sell the land in the future, the city would receive the value of Lot 72 and Lot 74.
Well, when you say the original condition, we would receive the value of the west lot, 76, and then additionally, we would receive the value of the building that was on there. Now, I don't go back that far, but apparently it was used as a telephone building,
Diamond State was there.
and then
And that's why that part of the building is 1 story, because I was around then, but not with the library in 92, 93. But my understanding is that just renovations were done to accommodate it as a library opposed to a telephone company.
The telephone company renovated into a library, and then
I think it was like 20, just over 20 years ago, the library, the other 2 lots were also gifted to us by a resident with no restrictions. And that's when the addition was done for the property and the 2-story property on lots, the east lot and the center lot.
Mayor?
yeah.
So your question, I think, a bit ago was, who benefits more in this arrangement, the city or the library? And I'm not grasping the answer to that yet.
I guess what we have to do is value West Lot 76, that if they had to fulfill their conditions, then the value of that to the city is the value of the lot plus the value of the building that was on it at that time, right? Compare that to this new flip-flop situation where if they cease to be a library, excuse me, then what we would receive in return would be the value of the land only for East Lot 72 and Center Lot 74, correct?
Correct.
So are we dealing apples to apples? It's slightly different because the west lot had an unimproved building on it at the time, and now this flip-flop situation, they're only valuing 2 lots. But that's our determination. Are 2 lots with just the land, correct? A greater value than 1 lot plus a building on it. Problem is, we don't have any valuation of that building, right?
Well, I'm happy to give my opinion. I think the value of 2 land the land value of the two easternly lots is more valuable than the westernly lot with the building on it.
I would certainly agree with that, that it's kind of a 2-for-1. Lots closer to the ocean certainly are more valuable than ones farther away. But I think one of the issues that is not a dollar and cents aspect that needs to be brought into this equation is the fact to maintain the library in the city of Rehoboth Beach. And I think this is a commitment that's been made on several occasions, as has been stated here on several occasions, also in the standpoint of the financial commitment that the library has made to renovate the downtown property prior to starting any development or construction on the other building that they envision having in the future. So I think that the dollar amount of the land is certainly important, but that commitment and the ability to keep a library, operating library in the city has to be figured into this, and you really can't put a dollar amount into that, but it certainly has to be part of the equation, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, go
I would
ahead.
like to add to what Commissioner Gossett just said, in that part of the reason we're sensitive to the time on this is because we are planning to do a renovation of this part to make it work best for the current usage for libraries. And it's the preliminary conversation we've had, it looks like it's about a $6 million, $5 to $6 million investment in the building. We have secured $3 million of ARPA funds that will be used for strictly downtown. And we have also secured some bond bill commitment using the ARPA money as a match. We would still want to do some fundraising, but we would definitely be making an investment. And part of the reason, the library board agrees that the land of 2 lots on Rehoboth Avenue is worth more than one that's further from the ocean with a building. And part of the reason we're willing to do that is because we're trying to show our intent is to stay downtown. I mean, the only reason that we would live is, God forbid, none of us know what's happening in this world today, but it would be some extreme situation. I mean, our intent is to fully stay downtown. We're trying to reduce the size to what is needed based on the population and the usage for basically east of Route 1, the city limits, and about a mile outside of the city limits, because people don't like coming downtown because of parking and traffic. So a majority of the residents and visitors that stay on the west side of Route 1 would like a different location. So that's why we're trying to do this, and allowing us to lease for other use. My numbers are gone. The one by the summer house allows us to have some money to go towards operating funds, because we are trying to make sure that we can also, once you do these renovations, between ARPA, bond bill, and fundraising, we're not really worried about raising the money to do the renovations. We are making sure, or trying to make sure, that we have the ability to also operate things, because the costs are going to go up. And that the money from renting that would go towards operations for the overall building.
I have some clarifying questions, because I've been confused about this. So what does transfer or revert mean? Transfer to me means I'm handing it over to you, but you're saying it's handed over with a price.
Yeah, you can essentially think of them as the same thing. Revert was used because there was the conveyance in '93.
Right.
So now Jay and I thought that transfer would be a more appropriate usage of word, but
But what do you get in the transfer?
You're associating transfer with free.
Yeah, I'm transferring the property back to you. I'm giving it back to you.
Yep.
That's not the case, though.
so transferring ownership of the property and
For a payment.
For a payment. So
Exactly.
there's no transfer. You got to buy it.
if they stop using the library as a library, it automatically transfers.
Because I don't
for
think
free.
that was clear in here. I don't know if anybody else feels that way. The other question I have, and maybe this is for Kay, and I think you maybe just clarified it. So currently, you folks have no interest in using the west side going forward.
We have interest in leasing it, but
Because my
not,
question would be, why don't we just adhere to the current agreement and that goes, transfers or reverts back to the city, and then we're done, and it's very clean. But it sounds like that you want that
one thing
for as
we
a,
did check into was if we used a portion of the west location, did that qualify for fulfilling the current agreement? And if we don't, my understanding, or what I was told, was that we have to use the whole thing.
right.
And that takes away the usage of the upstairs, and we can't use the current, we don't need the whole building.
So I guess my question is, so if, under the current agreement, before anything is signed, that would just revert or transfer back to the city? And then you would get income to do the renovations you need for the new parcel or the smaller
We didn't
parcel?
really want to sell the building or that portion either,
But you don't want to use it. But you want to use it to raise money to fund the new
operations.
footprint.
We want to lease it to fund operations, and we held up the design until we knew what you guys were going to agree to.
Right.
Or not agree to. And so I'm not positive if we would need any portion of that for library usage.
Right. And then, as you said, should there be some catastrophic reason that you would have to leave town, under the new plan that you put together, Easton Center transfers back to the city for a price. Okay.
Commissioner, I guess I heard your initial proposal a little different in that could we retain the current conditions or restrictions?
No, I'm just saying if we just adhere to what we currently have.
Such that they apply to if the library ceases to exist on all three,
Right.
then the current conditions kick in.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
No.
As I understand it now, is if there's three parcels, the west is not going to be used, and the current deed restriction, that reverts back to the city. So to me, that's very clean. But now we're trying to flip-flop, and then if this happens, reverts not this, it's really transfer, and then you're gonna have to pay value of a building on one of the lots or value of the land. It just seems very overly complicated if the result is that the west is no longer gonna be used as a library, then the old agreement kicks in that reverts back to the city. Or what am I missing?
I don't think you're missing anything, because I completely agree with Commissioner Bennett. I've been confused about this from the get-go. And I keep struggling with this basic question is, who does this thing favor? The city or the library? And I don't think, if I'm understanding correctly, we have the right information other than very intelligent perspective from ourselves that it could benefit us, but we don't know that for a fact. I mean, I completely understand that 2 lots, land value, et cetera, but I don't know if there is a but. But it seems overly complicated to me as well.
So your scenario is very simple, and it would give it back to the city. I guess what it would do is it would give us either money or the land, and then, but it's a detriment to the library because they would lose rental income from that property.
Right, but as I understand the agreement, we would have to pay for that land, right? It doesn't just, we're not just,
no.
well, that's my question here. So it transfers back to us for free?
Yep.
Okay, so we're giving up that option. So these 2 parcels are not going to transfer back for free?
Yes, they would.
No, but we have to pay for them.
So right now, the restrictions are on lot 76. So if they stop using that parcel as a library, it automatically transfers back. It reverts back. The proposal is to release the restrictions on 76 and place similar restrictions on 74 and 72, such that if those parcels stop being used as a library, they would automatically transfer to the city.
And then what?
This is the city's property.
And we don't pay for it?
Nope.
So we're getting 2 free lots?
Commissioner Bennett, the only time that we would ever be paying anything is if we allow them to sell all of the lots that they currently own there's a deed restriction on one of them. If we want to retain those, we would have to pay for it, less the fair market value of the land. That's the only time we would have to pay for anything, is if we allow them to sell the property as a whole and we want to keep it. Is that fair, Alex?
Can I ask James Berry to come up? He also has a legal background. He's worked with Jay extensively, so he may be able to add something. Worked with Jay on this.
Good morning. The way Alex has described it is the intent of both parties. And I think that overall, if you're looking at a simple arithmetic calculation, the city gains in this, not the library. So, because you will get the value of 2 lots rather than one with that improvement, which we have no idea what it cost when it was done. So, it will be something that's clean, and I think it's very clear. And just as I said, from a purely economic perspective, the city gains the way it's drafted. But you may have another question?
Yeah, I'm just, because when I asked the question earlier about the definition of transfer and revert, I understood the response I got was that required a cash payment. Mm-hmm. And now later on in the discussion, that's not the case, which is a very different answer.
Yeah, right.
So as I understand what you're saying is if for some reason the library no longer exists, under this new agreement, the 2 parcels come back to the city.
Correct.
The city owns them outright and there's no money exchanged.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
This is a no-brainer for me. I think it makes sense. I think monetarily, the city has the benefit getting 2 parcels rather than the current 1 on the deed restriction. And I think Commissioner Gossett articulated it well before. Sure, if the west lot ceases to be a library and it reverts back to the city, that's clean. But it doesn't give us assurance that the library will continue to be used as a library. This act would ensure that to a large degree, which I think is important, and you can't put a monetary value on that. But it's clear that our citizens want to make sure that a library continues in downtown Rehoboth.
And the library board wants that also.
Correct.
And
So
that's part
I-
of the reason we are agreeing to a value of 2 lots for the city versus 1 lot, so that we can guarantee library services downtown on the east lot and the center lot.
This makes perfectly good sense to me, and I think we should just move forward.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I completely agree that if we explain this correctly in very simple, easy to understand English, I think we as commissioners will be ahead of the game from criticism from constituents that we've done something that doesn't make sense to them.
So we need to transfer from legalese to English?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, I think one thing we can do is clean up these drawings so that we've got the right nomenclature on there, and then re-articulate in writing what those conditions are. I would like to share with everybody what the process is. This is not a zoning issue, so we don't have to go to public hearing on it. It's merely that we need to put it on an agenda for a vote. And if at the end of this session, the commissioners want to do that, we can put it on for a vote at our regular meeting in February.
Can I make one
Yeah.
just an observation question? I think I believe I understand what's being proposed and so forth. I don't have any problems with that, but I'm always concerned about, and this is just me being the either unintended consequences or best laid plans going awry or whatever. But there are a couple things. One is what we're dealing with now is we have a city government and we have a non-for-profit board that controls the operation of a library. And obviously, we want to perpetuate that and make sure that that happens in the future. But I'm just trying to, if, you know, I'm not good at this, and I think attorneys are, you know, to be able to give certain assurances that what we're planning to do now perpetuates. And I just want to make sure, A, that there's some conditions with regard to like what happens if under certain circumstances, for example, if for whatever reason the library board for whatever reason no longer existed or got taken over by somebody else or whatever, or will there be parts of this agreement that articulate those conditions or what would happen? I'm also sort of concerned about, for whatever reason, their hopes to turn the west parcel 76, I believe, into something else, and that never really kind of pans out to be what it is, and we have like a derelict building downtown, or it's destroyed or something, or there insurance requirements, or there's going to be some kind of other thing that comes into play. That's really, I'm just trying to maybe tie some, I don't know if they're loose ends, but ends, you know, just to make sure that the assurances that we're making assumptions about are clearly articulated, I guess.
Well, Commissioner Margaret, I think I really resonate with your comments, because from the very first meeting, I know I was very direct with Kay about her use of the term the library intends to do something,
Right.
as opposed to guaranteeing, and in your words, giving assurances that something is going to
Right.
happen. And I think that's a very smart comment, that I understand that maybe catastrophic things could happen, but the more assurances you've got in English and not legalese, I think helps us with our constituents and doing the right thing for the city.
Right.
May I ask a question? The either agreement you're talking about, the library is guaranteeing that there will be library services at that location. What additional guarantees would you want?
I would just say, in the context of this agreement, I would assume, maybe not assume, but propose that there be some establishing a statement, I guess, that this is planned to be a library. You know, the city has a vested in, like the city had, like maybe that would be a whereas statement, but the city has an expectation or like sort of in our strategic plan, we plan for there to be a library in the city. That there's a certain commitment that's being made, and obviously, I believe that is true with the library. I mean, I think we can. Right. Come to that conclusion, but I just want to make sure that I would think, in a legal sense, you can base certain things on that statement, you know, and I just want that to be sort of perpetuated in this agreement.
Alex, doesn't the
I'm not saying
agreement
it's not.
specify?
I'm just trying to shoot for that. That's all.
Number one, I think if something happens, we no longer use the library, it reverts back to the city, then the city has
Right.
that ability to do whatever it wants to with it.
Right.
The other issue is, if you're concerned about Lot 76, then what do you foresee, is there anything you want in connection with that? Because we intend just to lease it out to someone and make money, because the current library will continue.
Right.
So I'm not sure, the way it's drafted now, you do have that ability. And if we cease to be a library board, then it reverts back to the city, and it's up to the city to use whatever they want to for those two parcels.
Okay.
It ceases to be a library.
Yes,
I mean, if
yeah.
the board changes, it doesn't necessarily.
Right.
reverse,
Cease-
but
yeah.
It ceases to be a library.
Right.
And the part I'm confused about, I don't mind guaranteeing whatever.
Yeah, here.
Yeah.
I don't mind, I mean, I'm open to taking back to the board any guarantees you're asking for. I just don't understand the current agreement and the proposed agreement guarantee that there will be library services on the property. So I don't know what else, that's what I'm asking. What else do you want guaranteed?
I was merely having some, I'm asking the question, an open question, I guess, is in the draft agreement, if we've gotten that far or whatever, does it make some sort of statement with regard to the certain expectations and desires upon the city and the library board that we intend for this to be a library?
I think
Alex, isn't that in the agreement?
That's cool, that's cool.
if I could, perhaps, and I agree with some of your concerns, Commissioner Market, some of those concerns could be addressed in a cover resolution to this, to outline the thoughts and processes, and also in other nonprofits that I've been involved with, those areas of dissolution of the organization really should be addressed in their bylaws and articles of incorporation when they apply for and receive a 501c3 rating. So some of those issues should be addressed, and I would assume that they would be, again, and to be awarded a 501c3, there has to be a succession plan or a dissolution plan covered in those documents to be approved, and you are a 501c3. So those are
Covered by the county, yeah.
two of my thoughts on that.
Well, and I would just like to make the observation that we've already had a nonprofit board walk away from us in an agreement. The LRCIA, I believe, disbanded. And so when that happened, relevant to the canal dock, that was a bit troubling. So I come at this from a standpoint of that experience. So I completely understand Commissioner Markert and Gossett's potential solution to this.
And I would say that I don't feel that is a total parallel observation, in the sense that that organization had a very short-lived existence, and the library has been a part of this community for many, many years. So I think it unfair to I understand your relationship there, but I think it's an unfair comparison just based on the reasoning behind the LRICA's development versus the library's board.
Well, and I'm really glad you offered that, because if you don't tell me why you think my thinking is a bit skewed, then I don't have any way of knowing that this necessarily is not apples to apples.
That's just my opinion in trying to compare those two and having history with both.
The library's been a part of the community for over 100 years, and our intent is to be a part of the community for the next 100 years.
Mayor, I would be supportive of putting this on the February meeting for voting, but I would like it clarified as to what transfer and revert means. Thank you.
A couple other things, if I may, as I'm famous for getting into the weeds here. In the regards of the cover, we talk about on line 21 here, Tract A, and refer to in Exhibit A, but there is no Tract A referred to in Exhibit A. There's Tract 1, 2, and 3. So it's confusing to me, but I would also suggest and ask that in the exhibit, either A or B, that we also refer to the county parcel numbers of the land, and also describe the actual lot number. That information, when these were written back in '96, did not exist. So I think to update with county records would be very helpful. And also notice at this top, it says no title search required or requested or performed. And I don't know if that is something that should be investigated further, or you can comment on that for us.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, that was in that document when I received it, and I think, our real estate department at my firm typically does title searches, so it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I just, with the issues that we've had in the past about no title existing or no deeds existing, I think it would be helpful just to reassure ourselves that what we're dealing with here in writing is actually what the historical records reflect.
Yeah, I agree with you, Commissioner. I think one of the reasons I was concerned is we need some conforming changes to both documents so they are in concert with one another. And this is part of the issue I was going to discuss with Alex and Jay when he comes back.
And that can be done prior to the voting meeting in February?
The drafting itself shouldn't take that long.
A title search, it's kind of out of our hands a little bit.
That's what I was
can
wondering, a
be
title search.
Sometimes 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks. But if we get started on that soon, we can.
I wouldn't make
maybe-
it dependent on that, but I think as long as that's in process, that it would be. And just one other in the weeds, I'm sorry, but on Exhibit A, on line 220, we refer to Dorothy C. Croft. And in Exhibit B, on line 226, we refer to Dorothy C. Kraft. I think they're the same person, but I don't know whether it's Croft or Kraft. So if we could make that correction.
Commissioners, I'd like to go to the public, take a quick pause here. Any members of the public like to mention? I assume all the board members are in favor, so yeah, no need to come up. Anybody else? Yes, Carolyn, state, you know the routine. There you go, thank you.
Carolyn Diefendorfer, city resident. I too agree that the city is benefiting here, and the residents in particular are benefiting by switching the restriction to 72 and 74 from 76. When I look at this stuff, to me, it does guarantee there will be a library here, and I do think that the city overall, if you look at it as being the city, you all, and the residents, is clearly benefiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anybody else? Back to the commissioners. We've got one nod from Commissioner Bennett that this should be on the February. Are there others? Same consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't have a problem with it being on the agenda. My only concern is that sometimes when we get documents the day before a meeting begins or the morning of as a handout, that's a little troubling to me because it doesn't provide us a great deal of time to look at it, review it, or more importantly, for the public to see it. So that's why I asked, is it reasonable to have all the things we need ready or in progress to a degree that we could be comfortable
Well,
with?
essentially, we have 1 week-ish.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with that time frame? And we'll clean this up. You'll clean up the document.
I'm comfortable with it. I'd have to confer with Jay to see what his timeline is like. And if the title search doesn't come back in
We're
time.
going to work with you and Jay, and if there's a problem or something, then we'll confer with you, and if we have to, we'll delay it.
And to just, I think it was Commissioner Sharp that expressed concern about letting the constituents know. We have held up on doing anything until this is resolved. It's not kind of signed, sealed, and delivered. But our I don't want to use intent, our guarantee is that once that is done, we would be starting a press release and trying to let everybody know where the library's going and what the plans are for future design and when that's going to take place and all that. We would be more than happy to share that with you, or I don't know who you have do it, if it's Evan or who, but to work with you on making sure that it's done in a way that also informs your constituents of what you want them informed of.
And it's in plain English.
Yeah, it's not in legalese, it's in English.
I'm very happy that you keep reinforcing that because I don't do the communication, but since this is a public meeting and anybody and everybody can listen to it, and they've already, if they're with us online, they know exactly what we're talking about. But I'll leave the specifics of communications to our interim city manager and our communications specialist to make sure everybody has their ducks in a row.
Okay.
Before this gets much further.
Walter?
Yeah.
Thank you. Walter? State your name and relationship.
Walter
to the city.
Brittingham, 123 Henlippen Avenue. Has anybody of knowledge been through the building to know that the infrastructure is isolatable? Do they have a common electric service? Are we going to have to turn around and start spending money right away? Because if the electric services have to be divided or anything, that could be considerable expense. The original telephone central office building had different power. Although I worked in the building, we were working for different things. But I'm not sure that the city, notwithstanding having our master planner, EDIS, and the city manager and people that pop up with new experts, are we going to have more engineering?
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Kay. Thank you both. We appreciate your time here.
Just to clarify, Alex and Jay are going to work on the clarifications and send it to all of us.
Yes, our intention,
As soon as,
our intention is to put this on
as
the
soon as
February.
possible. And then it will come before you guys for further discussion and vote February 16th.
Optimally,
Correct.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll be
And
in
so, okay, now I know what to tell the architect and like that. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to our next item of business. We're skipping over old business B as noted at the beginning of the meeting. We're going to old business C, review of proposed changes to the design manual for outdoor dining on public space license application, and amendments to Chapter 215 restaurants for any desired changes. If you recall, at one of the previous meetings, I went over two proposed changes only orally. So this is putting them in writing right in front of us. And one of the change, do you want to go through them or? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. There are 3 support documents included in the agenda. First is a draft ordinance to amend Chapter 215, Section 215-16 relating to application requirements. Additionally, there is the revised license application for outdoor dining on public space and the outdoor dining on public space design manual. I'll start with the draft ordinance to amend Chapter 215, Section 16. One of the things that we had included, it's actually there's a correction, not to 16, but to Section 26, application requirements. 215-26 application requirements, Part C, we've added several lines in there, lines 28 through 36, just to clarify that the drawing that's submitted for an outdoor dining on public space must include the details within the buffer area. So that was, again, included as part of a lot of the discussion that we've had at previous meetings about this amendment. The next change is on the outdoor dining on public space license application. You'll see in there, in the support document on page 2, the first paragraph, the red underline is actually what is proposed to be removed, and the blue text is what is proposed to be added. So when that is amended, that would read, authority to utilize outdoor dining on public space is by an outdoor dining on public space license agreement and supplemental permanent compliance for outdoor dining on public space. Licenses are valid from January 1st through December 31st for the years issued.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was trying to bring it up. I'm confused. Normally, our red line version has green underline for additions and red strike through for deletions.
Yes. So
And I don't understand the nomenclature here.
So the red underline and the red text is proposed to be removed.
Removed, okay.
And the blue text is in addition.
Okay.
On paragraph 5, also on page 2, a non-refundable fee of $150 shall accompany a new application, and we will be removing or reapplication seeking a license for outdoor dining on public space. That is consistent with the ordinance that was approved September 15th of 2023. On page 3, paragraph 5, we've incorporated the additional language, again, for any drawing submitted for an outdoor dining on public space application, that it include the details within the buffer, and that buffer area is defined in the outdoor dining on public space design manual. Later on page 5, there was a question added. Are you a corner property, yes or no? And again, properties, the spelling has to be corrected there, but again, corner properties have to have the 7-foot setback from the property corner, which is consistent with the discussion from previous meetings.
So far, these are things we discussed orally
Correct.
at the last meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
really 3 main changes. The first is, again, consistent with the ordinance that was passed September 15th of 2023. That is that the $150 application fee is only collected for a new application, not a reapplication. The second change was increasing the corner setback from 3 feet to 7 feet. And then the third change was adding the additional details into the drawings that are submitted for outdoor dining on public space. Again, those additional details being the components makeup of that buffer area, if there's trash cans, pavers, et cetera. And then finally, the third attachment or support document in the agenda is the design manual for outdoor dining on public space. The first proposed change is on page 2, again, striking the 3-foot setback and adding in the 7-foot setback for corners of property. The next changes being on page 5 under effective dates. Again, here, the red text and red underline would be striked with the additions being in blue text. So licenses are valid from January 1st to December 31st for the years issued. And under fees, a non-refundable fee of $150 shall accompany any new application, striking or reapplication seeking a license for outdoor dining on public space. And then finally, just adding the word license to the second bullet point under fees. On page 6 of the application, under license application, part 1, authority to utilize outdoor dining areas on public space is by an outdoor dining on public space license agreement and supplemental permit of compliance for outdoor dining on public space. And then under part 2, just clarifying that it is valid January 1st through December 31st for the years issued. And that concludes the proposed amendments to the design manual. I can take any questions that the commissioners might have.
One thing I want to go over is the effective date. Alex, perhaps you can address that. Do we need to put in here that these changes are effective immediately, or even in the case of the increased setback on a corner property, we have one restaurant that fits that bill that has already gotten outside supplemental dining on sidewalk permit of compliance, and they would need to come back for that. Do we need to state the effective date for these in the amended proposals in front of us?
It's not necessary, but you're welcome to do it if you'd like to. The code, chapter 215, makes clear that any updates to the outdoor dining policy must be followed and adhered to, and we also state that in the license agreements themselves. So it's not necessary, but you're welcome to.
Okay, so it sounds effectively we're covered by that. Any comments up here before we go to the public?
I just want to be clear. So what Alex just said, does that mean we would not have the applicant come back before us? Okay.
We would not? No, my intention is to have them come back.
You're welcome to do that if you'd like. Yeah.
So I thought you were saying, I thought you just said that chapter 215 requires them to come into compliance.
Exactly.
To do that, they have to come back for a modified permit of compliance.
Well, I
So
certainly would hope that we would not make them do that.
Well, I would say that the intent of this is to absolutely, especially the corner setbacks, is to absolutely have that apply. Now, in terms of the drawings that are expanded requirements, that is just going forward. But in terms of the setback, now I'm willing to say that if anybody has to come back to us because of this change of setback, then we would waive all the fees. I'm perfectly fine with that.
The way that I read it and how I thought Alex just articulated is that it would be up to the city staff to ensure that the applicant has come into compliance with whatever changes there may be, and that coming back before this body is not necessary.
Do you read it that way? The city staff can do it. My goal is that it's accomplished.
No, I understand.
I don't think it needs to come back in front of us because we're really talking about one entity at this point.
My understanding is there's a continuing duty to comply with new requirements in the code, but I can take a closer look to make sure.
Okay, so I agree with you then, Commissioner. Want to make it easy. Anybody else before we go to the public?
Question on this, is there any need to update any of the appendix to reflect that corner exhibit, if you will? And I know we highlight specific 2 tops and 4 tops and that type of thing. Would that be appropriate for?
I don't think there's any drawings in there relative to setbacks on the sides.
That's correct.
So I would say no.
So how, other than reading the manual, then I guess that's how it would determine. But in all other cases, we show examples of what we mean.
We could we could go, where is that? We could create one,
I think it'd be very simple, and again, it's so
something like this.
so that it is interpreted consistently throughout change in administration and what have you.
Well, that's probably an excellent idea because I was interviewed by TV and they totally boogered up. Oh, sorry. They misinterpreted setback, and so I needed to do a better job, I guess, of explaining it. So yeah, we can work out something like that.
And I certainly don't think that should hold up approval of this going forward, but just as another addition.
Sure.
Because it is in the appendix of the design manual, which we don't really need to approve. In that
Right.
regard. Thank you.
With that, any members of the public like to speak on this topic? These supposedly minor changes? Carol?
Carol Everhart, Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce. I just want to encourage that if they have to come back for any reason, that it goes to staff because of timing. They're running a business, and it just makes sense for them in a timing sense.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Anybody else? Thank you very much. With that, we'll work on a pictorial of the setbacks on corner properties. And otherwise, the intention is to put this on the February regular voting meeting agenda. And I've lost my agenda. Here it is. Next item is old businesses, animal issues, actually for specifically for street and transportation environment committees to be able to submit any reports on committee activity concluded in the past year or more, including agenda topics addressed, source of initiation of topics and disposition of same, ongoing agenda topics, and a list of future potential. Have you done something in writing yet? You're still working on it?
Embarrassingly, I did not. I forgot to do that.
Okay, well, you saved us a few minutes there.
I mean, if we want to talk about it orally, I do have my notes. I just never clean them up.
I just prefer to wait and have it in writing. I don't think there's any critical time frame right now. The second item of that was to discuss process for approvals of future. That's on there as a placeholder in case we need to talk about it. So otherwise, we're going to go right on to discuss structure of committees, including proposal to sunset 5 existing advisory committees and replace with a single generalist advisory committee. And this topic is sponsored by Commissioner Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to go on the screen to the 3 board documents under this agenda item.
Yeah.
This topic goes back to the November workshop, just on background. And during that meeting, I presented a possible solution to some things that I had been hearing and concerns that had been brought to me from constituents as well as commissioners. And it gets to the question of what are we trying to solve? So I just wanted to take a minute and talk about what I have heard over the last recent months certainly is a frustration coming from not only members of committees, but commissioners about the items of, it's hard to get a quorum with some of our committees. Not impossible, but a challenge. Some members are frustrated with the fact that sometimes items that are brought forward to the commissioners are not deemed something that the commissioners want to push forward. So getting aligned with the committees is a theme that has been there for some time. So when I was thinking about what am I trying to solve, I came to the conclusion that trying to offer a restructure or a revamp of the committees might be a way to go. So we started talking back in November of just the generalist perspective of whether or not we gain anything from trying. Mayor, what did you do with my slides? That's okay. Whether or not we gain anything or we lose anything from the structure that we currently have, which are 5 committees that are under the leadership of a commissioner, or we transition to the possibility of one centralized committee that I'll talk about in more detail when the slides come back up. It's the third one, Mayor.
Oh, you want the citizens group?
Yes, please. So we had originally started talking about just the concept. And there was some interest, I believe, and commissioners, if I'm getting this wrong, please take the moment to course correct me. That there was some interest from the commissioners in going a little bit deeper into the mechanics of how a different structure for the committees could work. So what I've tried to put forward for today is what it might look like as I talk about it. And one of the things the commissioners really, I thought was an important thing that we came to the conclusion back in September, I believe, that the commission itself needs to give more direction and clarity to committees of priorities and what we want to direct the committees to be doing. We had a long discussion about the leadership that we can show through defining priorities and really being serious about a top-down approach so that we try to mitigate the fact that in the current situation, I believe we have some committees who are very dedicated to some things that when it reaches the commissioners, it doesn't really go anywhere. And then it breeds some frustration, understandably so. So one of the things that may be the most important on this graphic is the leadership of the commissioners to set priorities. So you might wonder, well, how would we do that? When would we do that? And who would we do it with? Certainly, it strikes me that as we launch into our departments for the budget discussions this afternoon, and we keep going until we are complete with our budget discussions, that may be a very important time for the commissioners to talk about the reality of what our priorities are going forward. You'll also see on the slide, you'll see to the left, Reach Out Rehoboth. One of the things that we don't yet have in place is the process for what happens to information as it comes in on Reach Out Rehoboth. And I know we've got another portion of our agenda today that I think is another very valuable discussion. But making Reach Out Rehoboth a piece, not a driver, but a piece of the information that we as commissioners use in both directions. We give insight to the leadership for Reach Out Rehoboth of what we would like to see on the site or projects or whatever we might want to do, keeping in mind the 4 things that are below that circle, which are the CDP, the budget, staffing, and enforcement. One of the things that I think has not worked well for us over many years is great ideas coming to us, being bubbled up to the commissioners. They may be great ideas, but they lack connection to budget, staffing, and especially enforcement. So one of the things that we would have to be very serious about is how do we, as we set priorities, are we serious about what it would take to make those priorities real? So one thing you'll notice of all these circles on the graphic are the arrows that go back and forth between all of them. So as the commissioners get into our budget discussions, it would be ideal at some point in time that during the year we have utilized Reach Out Rehoboth in a way that makes it important to us as we think about our priorities for the upcoming budget. So at some point, you have to get on a cycle of how you do this. We don't have any of this in place. I'm not saying that this is the perfect solution, but it has occurred to me that our current situation, it really does lack more definitive management. I think one of the things that we could improve if we at some point decide not to do this is that of the 5 committees that we currently have, we can influence and direct them in a different way than what we are currently using. And I'll put that to the side for the moment. So you now get to the citizens group. In essence, the way you would populate that group, because it's going to be important not to lose the institutional knowledge that we currently have on the 5 committees. So you may want to populate it with designations from the commissioners, who are the leads of the 5 committees, to populate the citizens group, maybe with 1 person from your committee, 2 people from your committee, or 3 people from your committee. And I just put for discussion, last time I think I was talking about maybe 10 people, and maybe we go as high as 11 to 13. I don't know at this point. But the way you would populate the committees to get started is just like you populate any other committee. But we could utilize the folks that we currently have, and not to exclude any others. You go over to the next circle, which is what I'm calling subject matter experts. I've heard a lot from folks in town talking about the qualifications of individuals that we have in town and what they could bring to us. And I was thinking about, well, what's a way, if you needed to have subject matter experts that are not part of the citizens group, what is the way to tap in to their expertise? So what I put under the subject matter experts are all of these different extensions. You might need someone from the city staff to weigh in. We might need Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association, for example, if they wanted to act as a resource for us, for, let's say, a volunteer event. We could use maybe some interaction with the Country Club Estates group Camp Rehoboth. I won't read them all to you, but they're all important groups in town. Main Street, Historical Society, Library, etc. Even the downtown committee that I understand is part of the chamber could be a very valuable asset to the group. And last but not least, VIA. Then there may be more. These are just the ones that were top of my mind. So what I'm trying to offer is a restructure or a revamp to make it more productive. I am wondering if the commissioners are still on the same wavelength, that we're not as productive as we possibly could be in the current structure that we have. There is a way to populate a new group by really dovetailing and selecting from the 5 groups that we have now, because I would imagine each chair knows who are the most dependable, knowledgeable, energetic, and reliable folks on the committees. So I wonder if there's not a built-in way to populate the new committee if it goes there. And then there are some questions that are left to be answered as to who would lead this committee and how would that be done. That could be for a further discussion if indeed this goes forward. So the last thing I wanted to mention is to try to answer the question, well, why is this important? It's important, in my opinion, to engage on what's important and what's not important to our constituents. And the way we can go about really blossoming what Reach Out Rehoboth is intended to do is to put it in a structure that allows it to flourish. Right now, we as commissioners, and anyone who wants to look at the support document, we get a monthly report that has all of the comments that have come in through Reach Out Rehoboth. And we don't really have maybe a really tight working relationship yet between Reach Out Rehoboth and the commissioners to make it really live as part of how we stay in touch with our constituents. And I know that there'll be more discussion about that in a later agenda item. So Rehoboth is not the same small town it was decades ago. It is moving, I think, into a very interesting time, and I think the commissioners have a very unique opportunity to think about, is this worthwhile proceeding with or not? So I'll stop here and ask the commissioners feedback, comments, questions, clarifications, anything you think I've left out.
I'll jump in if I may. I would just say generally I'm with you. I think this is an area of that we have not managed well, and I think that what is both needed and what is both available, I think, has changed quite a bit. And so I think you bringing this up and attempting to develop it or expand it or whatever, I think is good. But again, it's in the details, and I think the details are not necessarily one or the other, but opposing, but trying to come up with something that we think we can manage and so forth. So I think, like, for me, the area, the citizens group, subject matter expert area, we need to, I think, kind of flesh that out a little bit more. Now, I'm going to just say, being a chair of a current committee, that and I haven't had this discussion with our committee yet, although I've kind of broached it. But I would anticipate, just using this as an example, that committee will exist whether or not it's part of the city or not, so, and I think that's a good thing. And how that works, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that citizen groups, if we're looking at it as being like like a mini board or something, I really don't know what that would be, but I would think that there should be, or could be, or, that you could have focused groups interested in certain topics, and maybe they align more with the subject matter experts. I don't know. That's really the only thing, is like figuring it out. But that would do things that certainly have an area of focus or an area of interest, but I would see as supplementing, not being opposing. I mean, they could certainly oppose the city, or at least be able to try to bring forth a certain issue or something like that. But at the same time, I think they could also augment the city. For example, we did something recently, which was a cleanup project, and it was great. And the thing that is, I don't want to say surprising, it's not surprising, but people enjoyed it. You know what I mean? They're out picking up twigs and stuff like that, but they enjoyed it. So it's an opportunity for people to expend energy for a positive thing, and so forth and so on. So I see a lot of that. Certainly we have organizations already like Rehoboth and Bloom and so forth, that you have a large cadre of people that are more than happy and willing, many of whom don't even live here, are involved in this. So I think it's something for us to harness. I think we also have to think in terms of the fact that the city is not the part-time people as it used to be. We got more and more people living here, or having a greater commitment being here. And again, like you say, they are very qualified, knowledgeable people. They've got time on their hands. They want to get involved, and this is an opportunity to do that. The only thing that I've seen in the past that I think initially becomes problematic is the management of these groups and so forth. Like for example, and I'm just speaking of my own experience. We worked closely. The tree group worked closely with the city arborist, and the city arborist was more than supportive and helped us a great deal. But I found that she had. There was a difficulty with that. She has allegiances to her boss. She has allegiances with how she organizes her time and so forth. Like, we can't be running her, and she can't be running us. So how do you work that out? And what are the lines, or can we prescribe how that would be? That kind of thing. But anyway.
Well, I appreciate all of your comments, because when you start talking about the intersection between a city employee and their boss and a committee need,
right,
that's already happening to us, I believe, as you just described it. And so importantly, I think we've got the chief of police and the director of public works sometimes spending time in committees that may not be the best use of their time. So, I mean, all of this, you're so correct that there is so much more detail of figuring out how could we link in with all of these different stakeholders that are listed in the bullets.
Right.
But that's just a step in figuring out what could work for us. The philosophy of whether or not we need a change, that we have a unique opportunity to make a change, could the change look like that? And maybe it could. And I'd like to hear from others as well. Thank you, Commissioner Marker.
Just one other statement is, I did have a conversation with Commissioner Don Preston about this, and he too shares, I think we are both sort of on the same page. We're very supportive of the idea. However, we got to work out some details.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
I will chime in. Thank you for the graph. I appreciate the diagram. What stuck out for me about this, and what I like about it is, well, first I'll say overall, I think this helps clarify with our current situation. Will it be perfect? We don't know yet. It might not be. We might have to go back to adding some committees later on if there's the need be. But to me, what stands out here is the Reach Out Rehoboth piece and the 4 clarifying directions, which would be the CDP, the budget, staffing, and enforcement. Because, again, as a commissioner in charge of a committee that has existed for a while, we've spent some time, I'll call it Groundhog Day, going back to issues that had been brought up before. And when I brought them before the commissioners, it's like, we've already decided that. And I can think of 2 particular issues that we brought forward that are in conflict with the CDP. And had I known that, or had I paid more attention perhaps, they wouldn't have been brought forward because of the CDP cleanup. And it could still include people beyond the citizens group or beyond the city limits. So I don't see a downside of at least exploring this further and trying it. And I particularly like the Reach Out Rehoboth piece, because I do think there's a lot of great ideas that have come through there, but they particularly touch the Environment Committee, they touch Beach and Boardwalk, and there's a lot of overlap. And I think that's the other issue now, is we have overlap in some of the subject matters that the committees are dealing with, and this puts it all in one place.
Thank you. Bassett?
Yes, I too, this is very appealing to me in the sense of functionality. And you mentioned earlier a top-down approach. And what I have seen over the years with committees is that ideas bubble up from the committee, and at times there are issues that affect their street or their specific interest of something of that nature. And in doing this, of using the CDP, the budget, staffing, and enforcement, specifically CDP and budget, drives that from the top down, in the sense these are our priorities. I know we spent some time establishing the top 10 priorities of the CDP. We've really not taken any action on that to how those are implemented. Several of them require staff input and funding, but also I think it certainly does come up. A lot of these ideas came from the citizens initially when the Planning Commission developed the CDP. So there is interest in those subject matters already. So if there is specific subject matter that came up through the CDP, this is how to implement that, and with the support of perhaps those individuals that brought those up in the charrettes that were held. You know, the committee structure right now is kind of clunky. I don't know that we're getting the results we expect. And I do see that this citizen group, and I know we're not down into the specifics of it yet, but I would think perhaps that this citizen group, some of these members kind of ebb and flow in and out of it with that subject matter experts, at some of those that are focused on a specific issue from the CDP, one of our top 10, that they have the knowledge, or they know of others that have knowledge that can bring that to the table. And once that is accomplished, then they could acquiesce to the next person that may be point number 2 on the CDP, top 10 or what have you. So again, I know we're not into those weeds, which I'm famous for getting into, but that evolving of the citizens group as to what best brings those topics forward in the citizens groups, how they're acted on, and what kind of timeline and conclusions that we can come to. But I would certainly support taking this to the next step of kind of digging down into it.
Well, and I was even thinking, well, this afternoon in our budget discussion, we're going to be talking about streets and water and wastewater and all kinds of fun stuff. And I'm thinking, well, at the end of the day, at the end of that grouping of things that we have to deal with, can I even tease out what's a priority in here, in the topics that we'll discuss this afternoon? I'm going to be starting to try to make a list of what are the priorities that could, if we decide to maybe continue to try to work with this concept, what are the priorities that can start to feed into the leadership circle here of the Board of Commissioners? So that'll be an interesting test, I think, for me, that does it bubble up as we go through each budget discussion, that we have to be mindful of the 4 bullets over here under reach out: the CDP, the budget, the staffing, and the enforcement. So if we're really serious about tying all this together, is this a way to do it? So I thank you for that. And there are so many more weeds. I appreciate that greatly. There are so many more weeds on this concept.
And another observation is that when many of these committees were established, the city, as you had mentioned, was much different. We had lesser staff, in essence, and that those committees, I think, filled a void that needed to be done. You know, I'm just thinking through my mind, we have the tool of reach out, which we didn't have before, but we have a planning and community development director, we have an arborist, we have a communications specialist, we have an assistant city manager, we have a new second position in building and licensing for code enforcement. So a number of those issues that the committees dealt with, say, 5, 8, 10, 15 years ago, there was no staff support there to take care of those, where a lot of those items now are just done because that is the responsibility under those job descriptions. So.
Well, I somewhat disagree with that. I don't think our city staff has a substitute for committees. I think committees are specifically to poll and get the energies and ideas from our citizenry. I'm having a little struggle trying to support this because I think it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of organization, more power to somebody. Somebody's going to have to step up to do all this, and I don't know how many months it'll take, but I would rather see those energies extended to improve the functionality of our existing committees.
How does that happen then if you just spoke about how do we implement this? How do we improve then the functionality of the existing committees?
I think a lot of things you're applying here could possibly go to the committees, but we haven't explored the process on vetting, the commissioners vetting what topics go forward. I mean, you're going to do it here, and it's similarly applicable to our existing committees. So anyhow, I'm struggling, and I'd like to see what y'all come up with.
Well, while you struggle, the intention here on the graphic is to have the priorities come out of our annual budget process to start. And then it would seem logical that maybe halfway through the year, we revisit, what are we doing? Are we making any progress? Is this working? So none of your comments, Mayor, have fallen on deaf ears. I want you to know that, because I think you and I agree that improvements need to be made. We're coming at it a little bit differently, but I think there's a middle ground here as we continue to go forward, if we decide to do that.
Sure.
Edward? Commissioner Chernowski? You're trying to hide from me, but I see you. I see you.
I mean, I think everything I'll say I've said before. I don't disagree that the committee structure is clunky, it's inefficient. We certainly need to have a top-down approach that focuses on the 4 items that you've listed there. And I'm going to regret saying this because I chair 2 committees and am the liaison for 2 other groups, and I've never been busier before in my life, and I certainly don't have the time for all of that. But I just don't see how getting rid of those 5 committees and going down to 1 citizen advisor group is going to work. I think we heard from 2 committee members that wrote to us sharing their thoughts, and I think they made good points that we've got subject matter experts that are passionate and engaged in some of the committees. If they get put on a committee that is more broad and less specific to things that they are knowledgeable about, they will likely be less engaged. And I think there's some reality to that.
Oh, I really like the way you just characterized that, because what I'm trying to do is have the engagement about priorities this may be the kernel for me that I should maybe I buried the lead. The Board of Commissioners circle up there, we are the ones that need to be the most engaged on setting these priorities.
Correct, we've been saying that for months.
Well, I'm the only one who's brought forward, here's a potential way to do it. I'm tired of saying the same things for month after month after month and not moving on something. So in the absence of any other plan, I have this one. So anybody else who wants to create the plan for improving the Board of Commissioners as being the leadership and the setting of priorities, knock yourselves out. I've been yapping about this now since November. And I can continue to do so at the March meeting if there is enough energy to want to continue thinking about it, working on it. But the perfect time to start, aside from this, setting priorities without regard of how we do it in the final analysis, is this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Because the budget, the CDP, the realities of enforcement, the realities of how we use our staff, to me, is very important as we try to grow. So I really appreciate, I like the way you said that. Thank you. Because I read everything that was submitted, and I took to heart, I don't want to lose the institutional knowledge, the energy, but it doesn't seem to be, when we have to use the words that our design right now is clunky, and that we're not meeting, to me, anybody's expectations. We're not meeting commissioner expectations. We're not meeting the membership expectations of what they spend their time working on, and then sometimes it just evaporates.
So the big issue, as I hear it, and as I appreciate the mayor and Commissioner Sharnowski's point of view on this, I think the real issue here is we don't have a process for setting our own priorities.
Correct.
And maybe if we did that, that would alleviate the issue of the repetitive nature of some of the committees, or the fact that some of the committees are stuck, or they bring something forward that just falls flat.
Yes.
Had we given the direction to the committees on what to talk about, we'd alleviate that issue of when we've all brought things forward that just have fallen on deaf ears. I mean, my committee, we've tabled everything.
Yes.
So for me, that's very frustrating.
Yes.
But had the commissioners all said, you know, here's what we'd like animal issues to look at, A, B, and C, I would not have brought X, Y, and Z. So I can appreciate that if we need to figure out what our process is, and maybe that's where we start.
Well, and for me, to be painfully honest, this is a depiction of looking in the mirror. This is the commissioners looking in the mirror and asking themselves, are we really setting the priorities? Do we have the discipline and the seriousness around this in order to drive productive committee time? So, where do we go from here? You want to listen to me go on again in March?
No.
April? May?
June.
I mean,
July?
Can we go to the public, take a little pause and come back to the commissioners? Is there anybody, member of the public, who would like to say anything? I know we got 3 letters, but feel free to come up.
Carolyn Diefendorfer, city resident, and I won't go over anything that I put in my letter, but as I look at this, it's very interesting to me that a while ago, you all kicked off non-resident members of committees. And yet, your subject matter experts are looking at groups where there is, other than the homeowners association, you're looking at groups where there is absolutely no requirement to be a city resident to be a part of the group. So you're inviting non-residents by saying you're going to use them as subject matter experts, but you won't let them be a part of a committee. So that I struggle with. I also wonder, Commissioner Sharp, early on, you said that there are other communities that have a single committee. I can't find them in the local area.
I did not say that. Not a single committee. Not a
I
single.
believe that back in the beginning you did. I went out and looked. I don't see any local
don't see them
communities
either.
that have one. I do think you're going to have trouble keeping people engaged if you have this generalist committee and they have a passion for a particular type of item, subjects, that kind of thing. You all also focus on, if you have an issue that multiple committees are taking up, you might end up with 2 different recommendations. You know what? That's okay. There are 7 of you up there. You could have 7 different opinions on a given topic. Why can't 2 committees have different views on the topics and you all get different points of view? That's not bad. We're all free to have our own opinions. So let's give a way for people to get their opinions out and get them from different points of view. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Anybody else? No, we'll come back to the table here then. Well, Commissioner, I see 1, 2, 3, 4 would like you to proceed, and 2 are questionable or no's. And
I see 5.
I think it's 5.
I see 5.5.
well, because
Don, Preston.
Don's.
And my objective would be to continue thinking about this, working on this, to try to win over the other half of Commissioner Chernowski and yourself, Mayor, that what I'm really asking for is, what is your other plan?
To be clear, I love everything you've done. You know that I think we need to fix and make the committee structure more intentional and from the top down. My only thing that I'm not sold on is all of this is great, going from 5 committees down to 1. And I think I've articulated why I'm not sure that that's going to work or is the appropriate way. But I think everything else you've done here is perfect, and it's direction we need to go. We were talking about the budget this afternoon. That will help us figure out priorities. But over a year and probably maybe almost a year and a half ago now, we sat down and made priorities off of the CDP. We haven't seen that. We haven't looked at that document again since. And I think we just, I'm going to be more broad now. Instead of us sitting up here looking at floor plans and doing permit of compliances, we need to focus on the important stuff, which is setting priorities, looking at the CDP a couple times a year, evaluating where we've, what we've accomplished, what still needs to be accomplished, looking at the budget not once a year, several times a year, to reevaluate, are the priorities still the priorities that we need to have? And I think just generally, we need to be more intentional about and strategic in what we're doing up here on an ongoing, constant basis. My 2 cents.
That's fine. I
Well-
don't disagree.
So where do I go from here?
Is anybody jumping
Got
in? 'Cause-
direction from your other commissioners, a majority, so I would say,
What I would suggest perhaps is that of your subject matter experts there, the list under that, perhaps you could reach out to some of those groups to get their input, that their role or their feeling or their participation, whether that would be a welcoming opportunity for them. If their plates are too full, to add something else to their commitments, just sort of get some input that if we organize this, will we have participation and the feeling there. Clunky, I guess, would talk about it, but I think it was last January or December, December of 2022 or January of 2023 that we sat here and did the top 10 items from the CDP. And that hasn't seen the light of day for over a year. So I think that says a lot about us and setting priorities, and we set them and then we don't make them actionable. So I think one of the key issues for me with this new concept or this particular concept is how to make it actionable and responsible, whether there's a time frame set for assigning a topic and you come back in 45 days with the first report or something of that nature, but some aspect to get some skin in the game and have a response on this, or to come back and say, you know, this is just really a crazy idea and it's not effective for here. I mean, there's, as Ms. Stiefendorfer said, there's nothing to have opposing opinions and to say, you know, the 6 of us or 7 of us up here think it's a great idea. And it's like, put it out to the citizenry or the advisory committee and say, that's just not appropriate, or it might work if you go a different direction. But I think input from the potential subject matter groups to draw from, just to get their input.
I will do that. I will do that.
And to the extent that we can join in that process without violating FOIA or whatever, I'm happy to be involved.
Well, and I think that's really a sticky wicket there.
Right.
But I think we have to address it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I thank everybody for their candid feedback. Commissioner Bennett, do you have something else?
I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about the setting of the priorities, and a couple of people here now have mentioned the CDP. I'd be curious as we develop it, and maybe it's something I'll take on, is if I look at those 10 things that we selected from the CDP, where would they slot in the current committee structure? In other words, of those 10 things, is there one committee that would get the majority of them or not, or is it equally spread out? Maybe we don't have all the right committees. But if we're going to use that as a starting point, if I took a look at that and brought that back to say, of these 10 priorities we selected, these would be the committees that would at least have input on those, if we think that would be helpful.
I think it would be great. It was actually, it's a needed next step.
Yeah, okay. I'll look at that.
Thank you.
All righty.
I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Thank you for the diagram. With that, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is new business A, discuss appointing Tyler Technologies as the firm to serve as the city's tax assessor. Evan?
Thank you, Mayor. Pursuant to the city charter, the mayor and commissioners are required to appoint a assessor for the city. From 2013 to 2018, we utilized PTA. From 2018 to 2020, we used Georgiana Treatley. And then from 2021 until present, we have used Pearson's Appraisal. We have started discussions with Tyler Technologies, and we've been discussing with them over the last several months to chat with them about their capabilities. We're really confident in Tyler's capabilities, knowing that they are currently working with both Kent County and Sussex County on those reassessments, and also with other Delaware municipalities. So in the agenda, there's actually a draft contract with Tyler Technologies to enter into an agreement with them to perform assessment services on behalf of the city. There's also a scope of work document included as well. And then with us today is Ryan Zuck. He is the appraisal senior project supervisor for Tyler. Ryan is actually wrapping up Kent County's reassessment, and he's handled the appraisal services contracts in Smyrna, Milford, and Dover for over a decade. So with that being said, I want to turn it over to Ryan. Ryan, if you want to make your way to the podium, just to explain a little bit about Tyler Technologies, their capabilities, and their experience in performing assessment services.
Adjust that microphone so that it's fairly close to you.
Okay.
You can pull it to you. Thank you, Ryan.
Yep, thank you very much for having me this morning. My name is Ryan Zuck. I'm with Tyler Technologies. I've been with them about 17 years now. I primarily do work on the Northeast, all the way up from Massachusetts down to the Bahamas. I've been actively involved in doing valuation now for about 21 years, 17 of them being with Tyler. So within the state of Delaware, we're currently involved in the reassessment in Newcastle County, Kent, and Sussex. I do handle the assessments for the city of Milford, city of Dover, and the town of Smyrna. Smyrna has roughly 7,000 line items. City of Dover has about 13,000. City of Milford has about 6,800. And I do handle them on a quarterly basis, listing any new construction, any permits that are taking out for evaluation purposes. So we're proposing doing the same thing down here for the city of Rehoboth. Any new construction, any permits, such as a deck, patio, subdivision of a property, providing valuation services for them on your base date, which I believe is 2014. We will also be providing, all the data that we collect through the inspection process, photographs, a sketch of the dwelling or commercial business, along with that value. We will also be providing appeal defense in case that is needed as well. So we're looking to do that for the 2024-2025 year. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I think currently and in the past, the county has had a provision where the municipalities could purchase tax records, and I think it was on pennies for pennies. We had an independent tax assessor, which was me, in the city of Rehoboth Beach for many years. And we never entertained purchasing from the county the records because they were so out of date, they were worthless. And in talking somewhat recently with the county executive, they will continue to offer for us to buy the records at what price we don't know. But considering that they are doing a county-wide reassessment that includes all the municipalities as well as the county areas within the county, we have that opportunity in the future. So I don't know if we've given any thought to that in the future, nor do I know exactly how it works, whether buying the records from the county is an absolute complete package, or is it a partial package where we still need to have an assessor update when additions are put on our houses and permits are pulled. Can you add anything to?
Well, within the municipalities that I handle, being Smyrna, Dover, and Milford, I've recommended to them that they adopt the county values. That way, they wouldn't have the burden of the cost of maintaining their own records, maintaining defense, and maintaining going out and picking up the permits. That would all be done at the county cost, being done by Sussex County, and you would be adopting their value that they come up with, and you'd be using that against the budget to determine your tax rate.
Is Milford is either here or there?
Well,
are they?
Yeah, Milford
Are they
is
asking for Sussex County records?
They will be adopting the
Will
county
they?
records once they're completed in 2025.
Okay, so we don't know. We can't surmise what the fee will be from the county yet because I don't think they've provided us.
No, and I know the city of Dover and the town of Smyrna will be doing that as well, but I do not know what Kent County will be charging them.
So let's say we go that same route as Milford, and we start to buy the county, Sussex County records. Then what is Tyler Industries' involvement?
Well, the valuation would be done nothing with the city of Rehoboth because all information would be held at the county at that point in time. Now, we will be providing services with the county between the reassessment period of every 5 years. So we will be supporting them. It could be valuation, could be neighborhood delineation, could be sales validation. We will be supporting the counties between the 5-year mandated reassessment. But at that point in time, anytime that a permit is taken out, somebody will come out, measure that improvement, and it will be added to the assessment register at the county, which will then update the register that you maintain at the city.
What I want to understand is if we go with the county, then it's a complete, sounds like it's a complete package. We get the assessment, and then the county takes care of updating it when any permits are pulled.
That would be correct.
So if we go with that resolution, then what is your part? I'm not understanding what your part is. Your part would be working for the county, but then do we not need a contract with Tyler Industries to do some things in the town?
Well, moving forward, once you adopt those values, you would not.
So,
But currently, you haven't adopted the municipality values.
okay, so this could possibly be on a temporary basis that we contract you, and when the county is finished with their countywide assessments, which include municipalities such as Rehoboth, then we don't need you anymore. So I guess what I wanted to know, our attorney, is do we have the ability to terminate this contract with Tyler at some point when we get to that point? So you may not be contracted directly with the city, but you would continue to be contracted by Sussex County.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm happy to take a look at that. I have not reviewed that contract yet. Under the charter, there is a requirement that a tax assessor is appointed. So regardless of whether the county's records are adopted, we still technically have to have a tax assessor.
Well, and if we go the route of that, and that's to be analyzed, I guess, because if we go the route of using the county records, then maybe we want to change the charter or ask to have it changed or something. Okay.
Mayor, I thought there was an issue with conflict between the county records and the municipalities' records. Is that the case?
Does that really have to do with tax records assessment? I think it has to do more with drawings and property lines and mapping.
Which is what's assessed.
Yeah, that's what dictates what the value is, right?
Build structures and land.
Well, then choosing later to adopt the county records means we would be agreeing to use their mapping and their assessments. So that's something, again, we would put Alex to review.
Because everything I've heard in the last few years has been that the county records aren't very good. I mean, is that the case?
Compared
to ours?
I would defer to Ryan.
I guess if I could step, I think that this conversation needs to be had at some point, but right now we're dealing with, we cannot adopt the county records. I don't think it would be wise for us at this point until after the current assessment's complete.
Absolutely.
So looking at the contract before us, though, I guess a couple of questions that I addressed, and I don't know whether this comes to up here or you or perhaps our staff, is the criteria that we use to determine a value change. Right now, the section 23 of the charter dictates anything of $1,000 or greater that has to be reassessed. That was written 25, 30 years ago. So I don't know that that's, 30 years ago, $1,000 was a lot of money. Not that it's not today, but I think, if somebody is to have a value change in that property, is $1,000 a threshold that should be used, or is that something that should be reviewed and changed?
Well, based on how you guys currently do it, you want to maintain how you've been doing it to maintain equity. So if you've been maintaining something at $1,000, I would recommend to continue doing that because you want to keep equity amongst all your property values. Now, once you decide to do a reassessment, if you do that, you can change that threshold if you would like, because $1,000 is very, very minimal when it comes to any type of improvement.
Right, and that, that also, though, by code, and, you know, you're on an hourly basis or a cap basis here, but $1,000 could be a new front door, a new dorm or something of that nature all the way up. So the volume of reassessments that would be required under if we follow the charter, would be much higher. So that 35, I don't know if this 35,000 cap, which works out to about 50 days at 700 a day. Is that reasonable? I mean, how did you come up with that number, if you will?
The 35,000, that is what we use on the other three clients that we use. Now, typically, if we are running out of days, if we charge 48 days and we still have a lot of permits to do, we will have to get an addendum signed for us to move forward. But typically, we've never had to do that on any job except Dover in 1 year. They had a lot of building going on.
So the three communities that you're personally involved with, do they have that $1,000 cap, or what do they use for the criteria?
No, basically, they don't have any type of cap. Okay. When we go out there, we look at what was done to that property. Right. Now, if somebody put a new front door on, typically you would have no change. Right. We're looking for substantial improvements, a big deck, a patio, a garage, total renovation, new construction, things that have significant impact on value.
So like windows or new roof or something of that nature, would that be a dictated change in value in your mind?
Typically not. If it's only a roof, typically we would not. Now, if they did a roof, soffits, gutters, windows, door, entire exterior renovation, yes, that would.
Okay.
Any other commissioners?
And again, your response because we have all been through the defense at the hearings for appeal hearings. What typically is your role or Tyler's role in appearing at those hearings or materials presented? Or
Yep. So typically we will pull a sales file of the sales that have occurred through the base year of that assessment. We will look at the sales compared to the assessment, look at the ratio, and we will make sure that that value is in line with that ratio for equity purposes. And we will provide sales during that time frame for the defensive values.
So keeping that kind of process in mind, currently the city has its appraisal of land and structures, and we will also be getting revised appraisals from the county. And there probably is going to be some disparity in that.
Sure.
What do you see as your role then, if Tyler has also done the appraisals for the county and they've also done our appraisals? Is there a conflict there, or how does?
We want to make sure that we have the correct information. Now, we don't automatically assume one to be correct over the other, but we do want to do our due diligence, make sure that we have the correct information, the land size, the land value, the building characteristics, all of that can shift valuation. So by maintaining that we do have that correct info, that is the starting point of where we begin. And then we look for them comparable sales.
Ryan, in the past, right or wrong, our assessor, when they've received appeals, have contacted the people that are appealing and tried to work with them for understanding, because it seems to me most of the conflict or questionings are from not understanding the process and everything. Do you provide that service?
Absolutely.
Yep. Because it cuts down on numbers of appeals. Sure.
Well, a lot of times we will meet with the property owner, and a lot of times an explanation of why the value is what it is, how we got to that value, a lot of times it's a misunderstanding. They may not fully understand. So after that conversation, typically it can be worked out, or it can be dismissed or withdrawn by the appellant at that point in time.
Very good, very good. Anybody else up here? If not, we'll go to members of the public. Do you all have any questions?
I do, a couple more, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
In the attachment here, they talk about part of the quality assurance process, Tyler will dedicate trained staff who are certified as assessors in Delaware or similarly qualified personnel to oversee the valuation. Now, Delaware requires by the state licensing that they be an assessor licensed in Delaware. So can you kind of help me understand that similarly qualified personnel?
Yeah, I mean, it could be somebody who is an assessor or an appraiser in another state, and somebody who may be going out and doing the field inspection of that property may not be the same person putting the value on it. So they may be out doing the inspection, meeting with the property owner, collecting those building characteristics, and then the valuation is done by a certified individual.
And just internally, and maybe address this to Evan, staff, the City of Rehoboth will supply, we have a supervisory point of contact for daily communications and a technical point of contact to facilitate the storage of the data, photos, and new values. How would that be administered within the city?
Sure. So actually with us, we have some of the key personnel who are involved in the assessment process. So I think between the team that we have that currently works on the assessment, we would be able to identify some individuals to take on those responsibilities.
So, and I also, Tyler is the, I guess, I don't know how best to describe it, the overseer or the owner operator of Munis, which is our software system.
Correct, that's correct.
So it would be a, I won't say easy, but the mapping of data would be, I hate to use the word easy, but familiar mapping of data would be helpful, and it would be a easy transition. I hate to keep using those words. I'm sorry? Okay.
All righty. Anything
Well,
from you? Oh, you got something else?
No, I just say I would feel comfortable moving forward with this. His contract for a year expires February 28, 2025. By that time, we should have accurate information on the cost of the city tax records, and if we were to be able to purchase or adopt those. I think that's a decision that would be made at that time. But knowing what our current situation is of assessment versus going with Tyler for this period, March 1 to February 28th, I think would be a valuable move on our part.
Very good. So this will be on our February regular agenda for consideration and a vote. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for hanging around.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to leave. All righty, next item of new business is B, discuss a Reach Out Rehoboth ideas and comments process. Evan?
Thank you, Mayor. At one of our last meetings, there was some discussion about having the city staff sort of formulate a policy or a process for how we handle the ideas that are submitted through Reach Out Rehoboth. So Lynn has prepared an agenda item report. That agenda item report, again, I won't go into the purpose and background. That is embedded in the agenda. But included in the agenda item report are options or possible courses of action. So they are bulleted under the options section of the agenda item report. So I will turn it over to Lynn to kind of run through some of her ideas on this process for Reach Out Rehoboth ideas.
Thank you, Evan. So,
Oh, does she want to control it?
oh, can we show what I have up?
Mm-hmm. Can you switch it to the lectern PC? Can you switch to the lectern PC?
I'm controlling it right now, so
Okay.
she's going to send
That
it
sounds
over to
good.
you.
Sounds good. So at a previous meeting, I think as part of the monthly report that I provided about Reach Out Rehoboth, I believe it was asked, okay, so what's our policy for dealing with this information? So I really appreciated that question as we utilize Reach Out Rehoboth, and we try to figure out how we can be responsive to the information that we are receiving from our citizens. I think it's important to our commitment to engagement and to the vitality of the Reach Out Rehoboth site that the city be responsive to the information. So this is the idea page on Reach Out Rehoboth. And since we launched the page, there have been 24 comments or ideas presented. And what we've put together is a an outline for discussion of what the process could be to move forward on some of these ideas. What happens right now is an idea is posted, and then the city offers feedback. Let me find that on the comments. So for every idea, we list the idea, and then there's staff feedback. Either we've referred this to the water department or the streets department, or we're going to share it with commissioners, whatever. But in terms of taking action, we don't really have a process. Lots of times because we don't know what the priorities are of the commissioners. So some of the options outlined are you could simply leave it up to staff. That an idea presented or a comment presented through Reach Out Rehoboth is handled in the same way maybe that an email or phone comment is, and that staff deals with it. Another option might be that Board of Commissioners would want, when the ideas are presented, when it's a new idea presented in the report, monthly report, if it's one that appeals to commissioners, there could be some direction provided at your monthly board meeting. You might discuss Reach Out Rehoboth ideas and comments on the agenda once a quarter to discuss. You might assign evaluation of the ideas to a centralized committee or to one of your 5 existing committees. And then another final idea might be to hold a town hall type meeting annually to further discuss some of the ideas. Maybe not all the ideas presented, but maybe you would curate ideas that are of interest to you and that you'd like to hear from the public about.
Lynn, have you had enough response where you can categorize the types of responses? You know, I'm reminded back when we had citizen comment, which we still do, where people can ask a question that can be answered by the city manager or one of us. It's just a simple, is trash pickup on Christmas Day or not? Yeah, that's an easy one. Whereas they can ask a question that gets into very much detail where FOIA would not allow us to be able to respond. And in that case, we would either direct it to the city manager for talking with the question person offline. It could be that we up here say we want to put that on a future agenda.
Right.
We could say we want to assign that to a department or assign it to a committee or something like that. But do you have enough information when you get those to be able to categorize it? Because somebody's calling in, I call in, I say, hey, there's a dead raccoon in the road in front of 1 Cookman. Can you have somebody pick it up? Well, that's certainly not something that needs to be passed on to the commissioners, you know, but there are some ideas that we get and that you've got that say, hey, can you think about this, this, and this? Can you think about an extra pedestrian walkway with the flashing lights on so-and-so? And those, I don't know whether you just send that kind of thing to Public Works or whether it comes up here.
So some of the comments and ideas have been timely. For example, they may relate to parking issues or traffic issues related to the current study. There was a comment about wind energy recently because there was a conversation. We did try to frame the page so that the ideas page really encourages broader, bigger ideas, big picture kinds of things. So while there are some topics that are easy to refer to a department head to handle, there are some bigger ideas that I'm not sure how to move forward with. And as example, someone suggested a New Year's Eve event. Someone suggested that we paint murals on the water towers, that we install a sidewalk on 3rd Street, that we institute a shuttle service on Hebron Road or in town, and that may be discussed as part of the parking and traffic study, or that we adopt beach tags. So those are some of the bigger ideas that have been suggested that I'm not sure staff feels comfortable moving forward with without knowing that commissioners consider them priorities.
I completely agree with that because I've been reading this summary report, the monthly snapshot, Lynn, that you've been giving us, and just trying to categorize the mayor. To your point, in December, there was quite a bit. Actually, this was December through January 16th, summarized for us. There were quite a few issues about, or ideas about electric vehicles and shuttles and some parking ideas sprinkled in there. The beach tags jumped out at me also, and moratorium on demolition, et cetera, et cetera. But when I look at this, I think it's very wise to come up with something more disciplined because, Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong. If you give one of these to the commissioners, not give it to us, but you put it in this report, it really is for us to then discuss if we see something in here that appeals to us, to bring it up at a meeting and try to push it forward. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're not wrong. I don't think we've defined that process, though.
Right, because right now we don't do anything.
Right.
I'm just reading it each month.
Right.
And thinking about, well, that's either something we might be able to consider or not.
Right.
Okay.
And I think if we value these ideas and we want them to continue to encourage engagement, then there needs to be not action on every idea, but maybe, okay, we thought about that and it's not the right time for that or whatever. But my response is just a general, okay, thanks for the idea. We're going to share it with commissioners.
And just clarify one thing for me. If you share something with a department head, is there any wraparound to you, or you just push it to them and that's really their then responsibility?
Right.
The latter?
Yeah, the latter.
Thank you.
So we've got some more thinking to do.
It's really interesting that I had no idea this was going to be on the agenda today originally. And it's really interesting for me to now be taking these and looking at this and determining, well, seems like to me a perfect spot for them is sitting in Reach Out Rehoboth, which connects both to the citizens group and to the commissioners, to let the citizens group synthesize these things for us, possibly, just on first blush. Because I can very easily eliminate on your courses of action. I don't think, no commissioner engagement seems like that's a non-starter. You're already doing the monthly.
I'm saying commissioners could respond monthly. If you're reading the report and you're like, oh, I like that idea, I'm going to ask if we can discuss it further.
Well, that's contingent on whether or not commissioners actually read the reports.
Well, okay.
Edward, quit laughing at me. Okay. So what's our next step with this? Hello?
Figuring out how to organize them and how to bring them, what kind of action should be taken on each of the incoming recommendations or comments. Because again, there's some that we don't have to see or act on. You know, if they're talking about a broken something or trash can lid is missing on the boardwalk in front of Wilmington Street. We don't need those.
But Lynn, are
Now,
you,
I'm sorry, would those be, I can't remember, I have read all the things, but are those included on your list to the commissioners?
Yes, all
of
the
them are.
ideas and
So
comments are
So there's,
included.
again, some that we would not act on. I mean, they might be of interest to read, but. So do you have a recommendation?
oh,
Well, again, could they be allocated to the various committees we currently have?
Yeah, but somebody has to decide that, and then that's where, to me, the top bullet is the one where the commissioners have to direct where they go.
I would think that is one way to start, but in categorizing these as to budget implications, for instance, adding, painting some logos or something on the water towers, that is a budget implication. That can't really be done quickly or easily unless you want to do a projection, and maybe that's something to think about that would work down, that has been done. Others that may have an impact from the CDP. So that may be a category. This is CDP action, and what are we doing on that? Another may be strictly staff action, whatever that may be. Another category may be that current code needs to be investigated because there's a comment on here about electric bicycles on the beach or on the boardwalk. So that would take a code adjustment to prohibit them. Those are the kind of general buckets, I think, that maybe to look at initially that, I don't know, perhaps Lynn or city manager, again, I don't know who that comes from, but I don't know that that's our necessarily decision to make. But some of those buckets should come to us, either say, this is the action that has been taken, or this is now on your plate to take action with regards to budget or code changes or code revisions of that nature. To me, that would be a kind of logical way to move through this, because some of these are, if you are no-brainers, some take a lot of action and some may take a relatively small amount of staff input, or, yeah, we can do that, that's a great idea. Again, I'm just thinking on the fly here, but to me, that would be a categorization project. And I don't know if staff has is properly resourced to do it at the present time, or how to move that forward.
Well,
But we've invented, or we've taken on Reach Out Rehoboth, so we need to use it.
Well, I think it comes down to, do we or do we not want Reach Out Rehoboth to be successful? I certainly want it to be successful. I've wanted that been opining on this for 12 years. So I think putting real commitment to where these things go, I don't believe it's a staff issue. I believe some of them are a staff issue.
Even for the categorization of them?
I don't think we have time with the few, I mean, we've got one person in communications.
Well, that's why I was questioning that, but.
I don't see how it all gets done.
Well, I think first, perhaps one of the first steps is we need to categorize the incoming comments, because if we can reduce, if we can get some of those incoming comments to allow communications to just forward them to the right departments, then we don't have to deal with them. That reduces what?
Well, when you forward things to a department head, you have no validation based on the level of idea, whether or not it was acted on.
Yeah, but I guess I'm on a simpler letter level, that the missing trash can lid and things like that.
Lynn, how many missing trash cans do you get under ideas?
I don't think that I've had that, but one that I think, Mayor, fits your your description might be more dog waste trash bins. Now, I could send that on to Henry, but I don't know, is, that one to me is gray. Is that a staff decision, or is that a city manager decision, or is it a commissioner?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Commissioner Bennett, when y'all lobbied for that, for,
We would like more of them.
how
but-
would you, okay,
But there becomes a issue of cost
and budget, yeah.
budget, so. And I think the city manager, previous city manager agreed that in the Public Works Director that it was working fine. But it's whether we wanted to continue supporting and making the investment into additional bags and additional stations.
And my only observation is if all of these went to the citizens group, if they were required, as this graphic shows, to think about budget, staffing, and enforcement and alignment with CDP, you're already starting to discipline your way into what gets acted on and what doesn't. Just a comment, observation. But Lynn, I'm not sure you're getting what you want. You're not getting any direction.
I agree with Commissioner Sharp on this. My fear with this is a lot of people are engaged in giving recommendations, and I don't think we should just ignore them, because then the tool just becomes worthless. So there needs to be a way to acknowledge, thank you, we acknowledge that you've sent something, but, does it bubble up to then become something we discuss, or that it's something that we're serious about? I mean, there's some actually very good recommendations on here about parking, and particularly streets. I think the motorized vehicles on the boardwalk's important. I mean, those things need to be discussed.
And I think beach tags is one of the most important
Yeah,
things
that comes up all the time.
to be discussed for not necessarily right now, but the future.
The what?
Beach tags.
Oh.
Because to me, when it starts coming from our constituents or folks that are interested in that, it wouldn't hurt us to get 3 or 4 or 5 years out in front of a topic. Just my opinion.
One of your courses of action here, options, course of action, Lynn suggested incorporate an agenda item in the Board of Commissioners workshop agendas to discuss, reach out, Rehoboth-generated ideas 1 to 4 times per year. Perhaps such a conversation could be part of or a precursor to the budget discussions. I think that would be an initial way to start the discussion or start processing here if we did it on a quarterly basis and set aside time on the agenda to review the report each quarter. Sometimes I'm not really clear on how agenda items come up, but I think this is something that needs to be reviewed on a regular basis. We have this information, and as many of us that put in suggestions, if you don't hear anything, it's like, well, then, either I'm going to keep popping at you, or I'm just going to completely give up and go away and become disinterested. So I think if there is a structure of a quarterly agenda item that specifically allows an hour or whatever the timing is to review these items, and perhaps to say, okay, this falls into the budget, this falls into the CDP issue, this is something staff can easily take care of without budget implications or something of that nature. That would be one of my ways, I think, of moving forward. Theoretically, we also have a quarterly financial update, which goes into detail of where we stand financially with revenues and expenditures. Perhaps this conversation could be had in conjunction with that conversation, so that we have the idea of where we are in a budget, and would give us some direction as to perhaps moving quickly on some of these items that have budget implications, as opposed to kicking it down the road till the next budget cycle. Hello, I feel like Commissioner Sharp.
Hello, I'm here.
Any reactions or thoughts?
Well, I don't know what we're doing, but I know what I'm going to do. For the next 4 budget meetings that we have, I'm going to have all of these in front of me. because we don't have a good process right now. We're coming into, I'm going to say it again, we're coming into the budget season. If we don't do some things now, we're going to miss another cycle. And I think some of the things that are in here may be very important to us for long-term thinking. So while we dither around with what are we going to do with this stuff, I think for me, there's more of an immediate need to intersect what's in here with the budget process. And I'm going to keep lobbying, since you will hear from me again in March. I believe the solution to this is sitting right here in front of us.
All right, thank you, Lynn. Is there any members of the public who would like to, one more chance, say anything? Nope. Thank you, Lynn, appreciate it. With that, move on to the next item of new business, which is discuss establishing a court security fund for the Alderman Court as permitted by 10 Del C, Section 8505. Evan?
Thank you, Mayor. Included in the agenda is an agenda item report specifically targeted at this topic. The intent here is to establish or consider establishing a court security fund for Alderman Court. The details of the request are included in that agenda item report, but pursuant to Title 10 of the Delaware State Code, Chapter 85, General Provisions, there is the ability for the municipality, the city of Rehoboth Beach, because we have an Alderman Court, to impose no more than $10 on each charge before the Alderman Court, and those funds would be used for purposes of court security. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Judge Renee Bennett and Chief Keith Banks if they have anything they would like to add.
Thank you, Evan. Mayor and Commissioners, so just a little background. In 2007, the state gave every court the ability to add on a court security fund. It's an individual fund. It's a $10 per violation that's collected, and it's kept to use for court security, which would be better computers, establish personnel, equipment, training, anything that would help with the security of the court itself. This date, every court here in Delaware assesses that. All the alderman courts assess that. So I think it's kind of time that maybe our court would assess it. And what it is it's collected, it's put into a fund. Every 3 years, it's a separate fund outside the general fund. And every 3 years, the monies are taken and decided if we need to do anything with it. Maybe we want to wait and collect more for different things, but I think with security and the way things are happening, we might get into other kinds of security for the building, which would also assess security for the court also. Right now, we don't have a guard, we don't have anybody there. Metal detectors, we don't have that, but it could come down to that. So this would be a fund that we can start collecting and putting in for future use.
Judge, you mentioned that all courts do the assessment. Is it really all courts but for Rehoboth?
Right, on our
assessment,
right, on our tickets, you have a fine, you have a court cost, and then there's other funds that the state has. We have a Delgis fund, we have all these different funds. We don't include the court security fund. Okay. So that would have to be something that would come from the commissioners establishing this, and then it would be added on to our tickets through the state and be collected.
So, Judge, just to clarify, we're the only community in Delaware that the Alderman Court does not collect this?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
We're the only one?
Yes.
Okay.
How'd that happen?
Well, and it's been in the works for a while, and then COVID happened, and we got kind of put on the back burner for changing a lot of things, because there's a lot of things that's going to be coming up. And so now it's time. We need to do this, especially because of security. You know, we have a panic button. That's it.
Oh, I can't tell you. Every time I walk down that hallway, I think about how exposed these offices could be, and your door is standing wide open.
Right. Well, and I mean, it is an open court. We have to have our doors
Right.
welcome, but,
Right.
you know, we have panic buttons, which we do check periodically, so they have worked. They do work, but, and this will also help too. We don't have cameras in the courtroom. We have a camera in the waiting area that goes down to dispatch, but in the courtroom, we don't have cameras or anything. So this would help with that also, any kind of future security and upgrades that we might want to do.
Is there any downside to this?
Not, other than it makes a ticket higher, but not any downside for us to establish this at all.
We would just need to change our information on the citations?
Well, right, I mean, it would be something that would be in our code establishing this fund, and then we take that information to Delgis that establishes all the tickets, and they would add that, and they take it from there. We don't really have to do anything on this end other than having it approved.
But it's just a paperwork thing.
Right.
If we approve it, it's just going through the motions of what the requirements are.
Right, yes, ma'am.
Is it then managed through the police department, or who manages the
No,
fund?
then when someone would pay a ticket,
Right.
that monies would come from that, and it would be deposited into a separate account. It has to be a totally separate account than anything else.
But it's the city's account, doesn't have to be forwarded to
No,
the
it's
district court or
managed through
something.
the city, and then when the monies are spent on that, that would have to be managed through here also.
And this would also be on, so if you appealed a traffic ticket and you lost, I mean, it's everything then, would have this fee.
Right, every ticket, criminal and traffic would have this fee, right? So if you have a hearing, and of course you're found not guilty, there wouldn't be a fee because there's no fees at all or court calls or anything. So, right, but it's on every criminal and traffic ticket.
Thank you.
Any further questions up here?
Do we have the administrative capability of managing this fund and distributing the funds? We are. And that could be implemented quickly?
Yeah, I think now that, assuming that there's an agreement to proceed with this, I mean, we would certainly need to codify it and then maybe put some further explanation around the personnel, the equipment, the training expenses that it would go towards, but we would at least start the process to begin establishing. I don't know how long it would take, whether it's something that we could do for this upcoming summer or for this upcoming fiscal year, but certainly once we have the agreement to proceed, we would start to institute it as soon as possible.
So is there any timeline rush to vote on this? Because we don't have the draft ordinance in front of us, although it seems relatively simple. Do we want to ask for a draft ordinance for the March workshop and then vote on it at the March regular meeting, or do you want to accelerate this?
I mean, as soon as possible would be, because I don't think, once we get it established, I don't think it takes very long for the state to get involved, and it's just pretty much inputting everything into the system so it could be generated on each ticket. I don't think once it goes there, it takes very long. It's just on this level.
So you'd be okay with a vote at the March regular meeting?
Whatever you decide.
Okay.
Mayor, it's too late for the February regular meeting? If the ordinance is straightforward?
It's just a matter of time. No, if we can get the ordinance done and the commissioners are happy with voting on it, then that's fine. This to me could probably, since it's so simple, could
Right.
serve as the first introduction to it. Would you have time to?
Absolutely.
To do that?
And one nuance you might want to think about is I've seen other jurisdictions like Newark has a court security fund within their own city. So instead of giving the money up to the state, if you feel like there'd be a benefit to keep control over those funds, you could also do it that way.
And that's the way the other aldermen, I mean, it's all kept within the municipalities for use amongst the security in the court, for the alderman courts.
If we voted in, then the logistics of operation or management of it would fall to you, correct?
I think I would probably have to say something that it would be within the city, but then it would be managed with the Alderman Court, yes, sir.
So if you could work with the judge and Evan, we'll see if we can get this on the February voting. Because we have another item, we might be able to do the same for. Any questions from the public on this court security assessment fund? No? Thank you, Judge. So the next item of business, discuss updating the penalty for the requirement of insurance for all motor vehicles. Evan, do you want?
Thank you, Mayor. There's also an agenda item report included in the agenda for this topic. This topic relates to Chapter 92, Section 237.4, which is the requirement of insurance for all motor vehicles required to be registered in Delaware. Part C of that provision within our city code says that any person who violates this section shall, for the first offense, be fined $250 and pay the cost of prosecution. And then for each subsequent violation of this section, the person shall be fined $500 and pay the cost of prosecution. It's just important to note that the state penalty currently for a violation of the requirement for insurance is $1,500. And any subsequent offense be $3,000. I did confer with our city solicitor, and we are bound by the charter and that maximum limit of $500. So at most, what we could do is increase the first offense to $500, and then any subsequent offense would also be $500. That would be about the maximum that we could do, unless we pursue an amendment to our city charter. So is there anything else you'd like to add, Judge?
Well, also within that, there's, when you are found guilty of not having insurance on your vehicle, the penalty is that in our code is that you pay a fine. With the state, you pay a fine, and also you have your license suspended for 6 months. Our code does not have that stated in there. Ultimately, though, the state does suspend someone's license. So we don't have any jurisdiction over that, but we need to have that verbiage in our code so people are looking it up. Oh, it just says that I'm going to have a fine. Well, it also needs to read in there that your license is going to be suspended for 6 months. That's just, this is more just putting some information in there for someone that's looking in our code, because that is happening. If you don't have insurance, you're found guilty, you're going to have your license suspended for 6 months. That's all done at DMV. That's per the state. That has nothing to do with us.
So the state does the suspension of driver's license.
Right.
So really, this is kind of a wordsmithing thing to put it in there for those that we.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, it needs to be in there. I do, and it doesn't print out on some forms, but I inform everybody the first thing when they come in, and this is in front of us, that one of the penalties, it's not on the piece of paper, but one of the penalties is this, because I want them to know, even though it's not written there, I want them to have the dialogue that that's a big penalty of having your license suspended for 6 months. But I think it would be easier if it was on paper, and it should be in there. It should be in there for someone looking up our code.
Want to say anything, Chief? No.
No, thank you. I was following along and everything. Everything it's been covered. Otherwise, I would step in. Thank you.
Have we ever had anybody challenge us that it's not written, it's not in the code? They just accept what you're saying to them?
Yes, I've never.
But if we
I
put,
never have. I don't know if anybody else has.
Chief?
She's being a little modest, so they do come irate because they give her a phone call back or a nasty email saying, you know, you explained this, but that wasn't written down on the paper I have, and then I'm suspended. Or they'll tell that to the police officers too. So I think this clarity will help us get that through. Because again, driving is a privilege. It comes through the state. Motor vehicle makes the suspensions. The court doesn't. However, we take the blunt of it. Or she does, I should say, the judge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else up here?
Just curious, is this having insurance or having proof of insurance? How does the statute read?
It's well, having having proof, you have time, because sometimes you don't have a card, or you have an
Okay,
old
so
card.
that's the issue.
So with Delaware law, that's a mandatory appearance. The officers write a mandatory appearance, the person can come in, they show that they have it, and we check, we call to make sure, because many times that little card isn't the truth. So then it's dismissed, okay? So this is just a penalty that if you have no insurance, they can't provide the insurance at all, there's a fine and then the suspension.
Thank you.
And what happens if they're out of state? They have an out-of-state license?
If you live out of state, in order to drive your vehicle in Delaware, you have to have insurance on your vehicle. So they come to court and show all that information.
But they're obviously, because they have a different driver's license, they're not getting suspension. They're just paying the fine, right?
You know, I don't know how every state does that.
Yeah, that's okay. I
Yeah.
just didn't know if that's, because we have a lot of visitors that are here. I'm just wondering if you're out of state and you don't have insurance, what happens?
Well, you'll get a citation, have to come to court, or to be found guilty and fined. Most states sit there and recognize each other's, and then goes ahead and puts it on their suspension. Because we get out of state all the time calling us, and it's pretty consistent throughout all states. I don't want to say all of them are covered, but the majority reciprocate each other.
That makes sense. Thank you.
How quickly does that happen? If we had a visitor here for a week and they got pulled over the first day and were found guilty, could it be that the state they're from immediately issues a suspension, then they can't drive home?
No, it takes a while.
Yeah, it's not a quick process. Like court hearings, mandatory court hearings, when you give an automated ticket or whatever, they'll just have so many days ahead of time before it even gives it to the court. Automatically goes sent to the court, but to set that court date up. So you might have 30 days before there's a court date and all before we get in here for that mandatory hearing. So that's why the judge made the comment earlier that she checks every insurance, because somebody at that time may come in and show a valid insurance card, but we want to know if they had a valid insurance card on that day, so we individually contact that agency.
Okay.
See when it was issued.
Thank you. Let me ask the public. Did anybody here have any questions? Nope. Everybody must have insurance. Thank you. We'll do this same process. If it's all right with the commissioners, we'll have Alex write this up quick enough for including and embedded in the agenda, and we'll put this on the February regular meeting. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next item of business here, new business, is a presentation by Rehoboth Beach Main Street on a proposed scope for assessment of the economic vitality of the Grove Park Canal Access Dock. We've got members Jerry Philbin and Stephen Sheffer from Rehoboth Beach Main Street. And we do have embedded in the agenda something. Let me find it, gentlemen. And we'll let you take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioners. I'm Jerry Philbin, Secretary of the Board of Rehoboth Beach Main Street, and my board colleague, Steve Sheffer, is here. This is a follow-up to a conversation that began several months ago here when we were asked about what it is Rehoboth Beach Main Street could do to help support city decision-making around the use of the dock and promoting the use of the canal dock. There have been a few discussions since then, since that conversation. We met with the mayor and the city manager and now the interim city manager. The subject of the conversation was what is it that Rehoboth Beach Main Street can do and what's beyond our scope, our ability to do, because we don't have the talent on board to do it. As we said in the budget hearing a few weeks ago, we have over 7,000 hours of volunteer labor, if you will, last year that has supported everything that is in our mission. We have one full-time employee. We suggested in this letter, which went to you last month, that there were things that we could do to support the city's decision-making process although in our conversations previously, we recognized that we don't have the professional staff on board to do economic analysis, natural resource or recreation analysis from a cost-benefit sort of way. But there are things we can do to support the decision process in terms of gathering information, both from the public and from our neighboring jurisdictions in terms of the process that they've gone through, Lewis in particular, in how they made a decision about the kayak ramp, what the cost was, what they think the return is. We can gather information. So just quickly, we went down a number of the options, but for the sake of time, I'll be brief. What we said was that RBMS could support a number of things that could support the decision process by bringing information to you. For instance, we think there's a need to develop a public awareness campaign and a promotion so that we can actually increase the use. As we had discussed in our first meetings, many people just didn't even know that the dock was there and didn't know how to access it. But new signage and hopefully this conversation and things that we can do in terms of promotion might help that. We also thought that it would be good for us if we are involved in this, if the city wants us to do it, to contact Cape Water Tours and to talk about the water taxi, to talk about the tours that they're doing, and to talk about the schedules and how our dock might fit into those schedules, particularly around events in this city. What can we do to bring more stops other than what's there right now to bring more people in? We also talked about the idea of approaching our political leaders above the city level. Senator Huxtable, for instance, to talk about possible options for funding things that might enhance the dock, such as the kayak ramp. We know that cost Lewis some considerable money, but we think there are financial options there at the state and federal level that we might be able to tap. We suggested that it'd be a good idea to reach out to both Lewis and Dewey to learn more about current use, such things as management fees, although we also recognize that this may be a direct city-to-city contact. We could conduct community surveys, particularly in collaboration with the Homeowners Association, the Village Improvement Association, Radio Rehoboth, Camp, and the city, obviously. We would like to identify relevant city codes that govern the use of the dock, and we'd like to identify in the comprehensive development plan action items related to these docks. We also think that we could convene conversations on jointly sponsored events with the neighboring jurisdictions. We think that given the scope of our talents and the volunteer force that we have, these are the things that we can latch on to gather information and to promote the use of the dock. We're not saying that an economic analysis to examine the options isn't necessary. We're just saying that it's not the thing that we're able to do because we lack the talent on board. Steve, did you want to add to that?
No, you've covered it all. And one of the things that that we could also do is work with the city, the chamber, the homeowners association, to look for ways and to share information about eco tours and things like that, so the residents can participate much more than maybe they do. There were questions early on about whether the dock was being used at all, and it really is. I mean, some of the residents here will take their beach chairs down and sit on the dock and read and just get into the sun. We know that pleasure boats that go up and down the canal drop people off, pick people up. There are businesses in town that currently use the dock to transport people from Lewis to Rehoboth and back. There is a regular shuttle that runs from the spring until the fall on Tuesdays when the farmers market is running at Grove Park. And so we're looking at ways where we can help improve the awareness, increase the education about what's going on, work with neighboring communities and businesses that would like to use the dock, and make it more easily known by the residents. And that pretty much sums up what we would like to do in supporting the city.
I think the other item that I'd like to add is that the dredging of the canal all the way out to Dewey would probably change options that are available for the use of the dock. And so we would have to revisit that at a time when the plan for that dredging became more apparent and the timeline for that. Questions?
Thank you, gentlemen. Obviously, this came up many, many months ago. I don't know, it might have come up as long as a year ago. And I remember sending you an invitation with a kind of a transcript of what to do. And it's just because of things taking a long time to get to. So I understand that your desire here is that you want to invest your time, but you want it to be productive. And so you're coming to the commissioners to say, is this a list of items that we would like you to do? We'll turn it over to the commissioners. I am fine with this. I think it would be productive. I found it interesting just listening to you, Steve, articulate who was using it, because I'm never up there apparently when I see anybody using the canal. And so I thought it was interesting to hear what you said. One thing I'm not interested in, I would not be interested in, is item 5, having to do with approaching our state legislators and things. I think that's something that I would reserve for us up here at the table or something. But so again, I understand, appreciate you coming here and sharing this with it. Is there anybody who would like to comment? Go ahead.
Thank you for this. I have been watching or reading the economic vitality portion of your strategic plan, which last time Dan was here, I asked about this item, which I think is completely connected to this, which is support leadership in collaborating with the city to identify the role that RBMS could take in supporting the sustained viability of the dock, et cetera. And Dan, maybe I got the impression wrong, but when I asked him about, was I reading it correctly, that he would be getting back to us with some information by the completion date of the 4th quarter? That's what this says.
Is that from 2023?
Yes.
Okay, well.
It's the one you submitted with your request for the grant.
Oh, well, that's 2024. Right, and that's one of the reasons why we want to have a meeting like this where we can clarify what the city is interested in so that we don't waste your time or our time.
Well, I think what I was expressing to Dan, I maybe didn't do a good job of it, was I think it dovetails with what the mayor just said. We don't have any baseline, I don't think, of any data or any statistics or anything about, other than anecdotal, when we may see someone or whatever. And I was hopeful, and maybe I'm misreading this, that by the 4th quarter, we may have some baselines, which to me this letter alludes to.
I apologize if the language in the work plan was inarticulate, but it was never our intention to baseline use of the dock or the potential for the use of the dock at that stage. We were just looking for ways to help the businesses better understand that the dock is there and how it can be used. We've been open for most of 2023 from when the mayor reached out to Dan Slagle and Dick Byrne and the rest of us to start a dialogue about what the city's interests are and how we could partner with the city to do some of these things. So I apologize that it's been slow, but it was never our intention to baseline the economic viability of the dock.
Well, and this was for 4th quarter of 2024, not 2023.
Right, but that's coming up.
Yeah, well, at the end of this year.
The end of 2024.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So the things that Jerry mentioned are the things that we can do to help inform that item on the work plan.
Okay. I completely support what I see here with one exception, and it was in your verbal comments about surveys. I would be very careful with surveys in our town, because depending on how you ask something or why you ask it or who asks it, sometimes we give an impression to our constituents that something is going to happen or move faster than the glacial pace that sometimes we move at. So that's just, that's a cautionary comment, that I know y'all wouldn't want to do anything that would cause some backdraft to the commissioners.
Oh,
With-
absolutely
With
not.
calls or, whatever.
And when, the way that was intended to come through was that it would be a collaborative effort with the chamber, with the city, with the homeowners association, so that we had all the stakeholders engaged in what are the kinds of things that we could ask. And so it really takes the entire community involvement at that level to do it the right way, if we do it at all.
Right.
And I appreciate your comment about not setting high expectations or expectations that are unreal.
And sometimes the press gets a hold of things that it's a little premature sometimes.
And our intention is to work with the city, have some successes that we can build on, rather than shoot for the moon and, come up 2 feet away.
So gentlemen, have you analyzed any time frame on completion of this task, or?
I'm going to let Steve dive in on this, but I'm going to say we have done very little in terms of setting up a work plan timeline, because we didn't have a common understanding as to what was going to be done. Steve?
And it would be helpful, I mean, this is going to fall on the Economic Vitality Committee at Main Street to execute. But if, now, once you all say, proceed with the adjustments from Commissioner Sharp and any other comments that you all make, it would be helpful to us to have somebody on the city staff that we could work with, talk with, so that we don't misstep, and so that the things that we do are consistent with the pace that you would want, and the priorities are set right, and we can help execute that.
I think that would be our city manager or interim city manager. Go ahead.
Just one other question, and I think all of these are great attempts to go forward here. But I guess my question is, what are the metrics to show success? How do we know that we've succeeded? What is our expectation, or is it 5 boats a day or 1 boat? I mean, those are hard things to quantify, but if we don't have a goal to work towards, all of these may be spinning our wheels that, well, this didn't work, or that didn't work, or this did work. But again, I'm trying to figure out what are we trying to obtain?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, but it's also one of those things that comes out of doing an economic analysis, including an analysis of options. That's ultimately going to feed a decision about anything the city wants to do with a canal dock, such as building a kayak slide, or thinking in the future about what happens after dredging happens. It's really going to take somebody, I think, with the models and the knowledge of how to do it in this circumstance. And so, yeah, I encourage that analysis, but I don't know how to do it. Steve?
And I agree that the questions you're asking, the comments you're making are incredibly helpful, and we appreciate your time today. I think as a lot of the items that we mentioned in the letter that our president, Dick Burns, sent to the interim city manager, Evan Miller, is to gather information. We haven't started that information gathering process. Along the way, as we set up the right touch points with the city, we can flesh that out and see, based on the information that we're gathering, what are reasonable performance metrics or outcome metrics that we can establish. And again, with the intent of having some build up from small successes to bigger successes. And then as we get the information out about how the canal dock can be used, we can also, in our newsletter and the city through its communication, talk about what's being done. And so this isn't about Main Street. This is about the city's successes. And we're just happy to be part of working with all of you to help the city be a better place for the residents, the businesses, and the people who come to visit us.
Oh, and I certainly look forward to a partnership with that. There's no question about it. But, you know, we have to decide up here. There's issues of parking, of storage, of all of that haven't changed and probably won't change. So how to overcome those issues, or again, just how to measure success. You know, we've got a $1.25 million investment there that for the taxpayers that invested that money, I think we owe them the responsibility to show a return on investment or something in that regards. So, but I appreciate the opportunity for the partnership and look forward to going forward. I don't know what the next step really is, but if it's a meeting to begin implementation of some of your suggestions with a timeline of what could be done or what could be accomplished in the next 3 to 6 months or something of that nature.
And based on the dialogue that we've established between the mayor, city manager, and the two of us and Dick Byrne, we've already have individual taskings that haven't completely been dated, but things like, you know, who to contact, when to contact. One of the things we would like to talk to all of you about, or at least the interim city manager and his staff, is there a way to add a little bit of more rigor to the schedule of the usage of the dock so it's more attractive for the Cape water tours to use it? They need a significant amount of time to embark people coming on board their boats, to debark, and to queue up to get on. And so that's one of the things that we'll have to try to work out that will improve or increase the usability of the canal dock. I've taken a couple of the eco tours, and they're quite fabulous. I mean, this is quite, the waterways around Rehoboth and Duluth and further south are just loaded with all kinds of wildlife and foliage and things like that, not to mention the beautiful homes. It's not expensive, and it's a great way to spend a nice sunny afternoon if you're all sunscreened up.
So I must be misreading this, and I apologize. I thought one of the first things y'all were going to do was make sure that the member businesses from RBMS have current and accurate information regarding the schedule of transportation.
Right.
Now, you're reading from their strategic plan, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And it also gives, this is really to Commissioner Gossett's question, because it defines what they're trying to get to is the number of RBMS member businesses utilizing services available from the canal dock. So I thought this already told us, it implicated we don't have a baseline yet. Right. And my only question is, are y'all moving on making sure the businesses have the schedules?
They will, but what we wanted to have is agreement with the city on how we should proceed in assisting you. And so I think we're getting closer to that point now, and then we can start to act on that.
We were waiting to be cut loose.
I'd like to add that I think you have it in here, maybe between the lines, but I equate this a little bit as if somebody gave us a space shuttle and said, you can go to the moon, but we don't know how to drive it. So the city doesn't know what to do with this dock, obviously, the last 3 years. And we're not good at dock management. So what I was hoping to see, and maybe Main Street can work with the chamber, or we need to figure this out, but is there an entity that would lease the dock? So whether it's the water taxi group or it's a vendor that does kayaks or paddle boards, they obviously know far more about managing an asset like that than we do. And if we could lease it to them, would that be something that you guys can investigate? Is there somebody out there that would be willing to lease the dock from the city and manage it and take care of it and handle the security and all the other things that come with the dock that we're just not very good at?
If you asked us to do that, to support that, we could try. I mean, it's not writing a report, but we could certainly, again, in collaboration with the city, we could do some of the research and find out if that's a feasible alternative.
I mean, are we interested if somebody wanted to lease the dock? I don't know if that's,
We have not discussed that.
Beyond $1 a year, yeah.
I'm interested in anything. I'm to your question, Commissioner Bennett. I'm interested in anything that would support one of the original reasons for having it was to help the west end of Rehoboth Avenue grow their businesses and get more clientele. Thought that would be a draw, and it, to me, that's an obvious thing that the canal dock could help us with. Yes.
and I think a lot of the residents, I mean, I think the initial idea as it was sold was that we would have, particularly in season, regular taxi service between Dewey and Lewis, which I think everybody would welcome. If you can go to, back and forth, but that never seemed to, for whatever reason, take hold. So I don't know what the drawback is there. Maybe it's not feasible economically, I don't know.
I think we haven't even had those conversations with Lewis and Dewey, also with the concessionaires that they have and the water taxi. Those conversations haven't happened yet, and I think that's in this proposal of what we could do is we could convene. We could have that conversation focused on those key questions.
And again, we want to be nimble and responsive, so as we present information to you, and you have a chance to digest it and make modifications to the path forward, we want to be right there with you, looking at ways that's going to help improve the use of the canal dock for the city.
Would this be an opportunity to use Reach Out Rehoboth to come up with more visioning and or at least with a dialogue, at least with people who are using it or trying to for us to reach out to the community as to what they would see as a successful amenity to the city and the dock?
I think at some point,
but not now.
It would be. I think it's a bit premature because I'm getting the sense from y'all that if you had to say right now today, do the businesses, which is not the business of the commissioners, it's your relationships that are strong, do the businesses have schedule information or do they even promote the canal dock, especially the West End businesses? That's your turf, not ours.
Right, and we plan to do that.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't done it already, but that's neither here nor there, because I think at some point in time, Commissioner Markert, there may be a role for Reach Out, but it's way too premature, my opinion.
And again, we were looking for a little bit more guidance from all of you before we went down a path that wasn't going to work out for anybody. And so with your help today, we can start to get some traction and make some movement.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is the commissioners are fine with your outline here. Again, I would say that number 5 is something that we'll keep in touch with you, but that's in our bailiwick. And then in addition, the action items within your strategic plans, I think we would be interested in any follow through on that also.
And just let me put a fine point on it. That's where I'm getting confused. What I've been talking about is in your strategic plan, and it's already assigned to people with completion dates and so forth. I didn't think the items in your that were presented to the commissioners already with the grant proposal were contingent on the commissioners actually giving a go-ahead on anything, if that makes sense.
And again, I apologize if the language wasn't crisp enough, but it's a work plan, not a strategic plan. It's a work in progress, and it's a working document that we'll use and will be modified, just like any other working plan for any other group. And so now that we've established the fact that we can continue the dialogue with all of you with your approval of the actions that we've laid out that we plan to take, we'll start to get traction and we'll start to get momentum.
I think there's some confusion, so I'll try to clear it up. what's listed in your work plan, such as informing the businesses, their employees, our residents of the schedule of the taxis, all of that stuff, that is completely separate than what you've got on the screen here. This is in addition to what you already plan on doing to make sure our businesses are informed, our residents are informed. This is in addition to get more information, feedback on how we could improve the existing conditions of the dock.
Right. And just to, in the interest of trying to add context, that plan that Commissioner Sharp's reading from, that's for this year.
We're 5 weeks in.
We're 5 weeks in, and we just had the last letter that we sent to the interim city manager dated the 24th of January, and thanks to all of you for scheduling us to talk today. We've made huge advancements just in the last couple weeks, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Patrick, you're currently the chair.
Oh, well, thank you very much. One follow-up, your question number 9, identify city codes governing the use of the dock. It's chapter 195, and I'll send it to you, I'll send it to Dan, so he has it. Okay, all right.
Mr. Vice President, oh, there comes the mayor.
30 seconds is done. Okay. I yield.
Did you have a comment on the Main Street thing?
Thank you. Walter Birmingham, 123 Henlipton Avenue. This is part of the problem because it says in here that there have been multiple meetings, and I don't think I've heard anything in lines in the sand and all the other stuff the city puts out. Our initial problem comes from the fact that there was a dock picture, and nobody was supposed to know about the dock picture. And all the people that were involved in it, they were down there to be sure they got their picture, all but one. And it cost us a pile of money. And it's no different than the lifeguard facility. There's too many projects and too many people jumping into stuff. And you talk about one committee. You need the separate committees. All due respect, Commissioner Sharp, but you don't listen to when those of us in the community have stuff to bring forward. You don't listen, and if you do, you don't do anything about it. It's costing us millions. And there's a lot of good stuff in here, but you shouldn't have to have a separate committee because the work probably already exists. But Mr. Mandela's firm didn't speak up in public. The mayor didn't speak up in public at the time. Everybody wanted to be part of the dock. And I stood up here and said at the time, this is a flawed document. There is not going to be a kayak launch or anything like it. Then all the mayors from Dewey Beach all the way to Lewis, including Henlipton Acres, signed on. They wanted the canal dredged. And they came on board and said, we'll go ahead and do that, but it might be 5 years before we get there. And there needs to be better planning. And I shouldn't have to read the budget last night and find out that we have more subsidized housing for the police and lifeguards, which I believe in, but we don't get information from you. And we shouldn't be getting it from the Cape Gazette and communications specialists. If you're going to change the rate jokingly from 50 cents an hour or 25 cents an hour extra to budget session items for today, 50-cent addition per hour, you're not communicating enough.
Thank you, Walter. With that, we'll go to the next item of new business, which is discuss parking rates and desire for any changes for the 2024 season. I think this came up at a last meeting. I think, Ed, maybe you helped initiate it. I just want a reminder, as I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting today, there will be no discussion of Deauville Beach that's off the table with regard to parking programs, parking fees, et cetera. Do you want to take it over?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. And I think the last public comment segues well into this topic. So again, there was a comment made by a commissioner at the last meeting about wanting to discuss parking rates for the upcoming season. And so as such, we've added an agenda item on today's agenda for discussing parking rates and a desire for any changes for the 2024 season. I will preface this by saying there is a support document included in the agenda, which was prepared by June Embert, the parking supervisor, again, which provides some historical context and some additional information, some comparisons with parking rates from the city of Rehoboth Beach and with surrounding municipalities. I also want to preface just by saying that we do have our budget meeting this afternoon, and in an attempt to present some recommendations or options to help balance the budget, we do have included in there one potential course of action, and that is increasing parking rates from $3 to $3.50. There was the last comment that we had heard at this table was maybe to consider going from $3 to $3.25. So again, for the purposes of discussion today, I just wanted to preface with that, and from there we can turn it over to the commissioners. And June is available. I'm available to answer any questions as it relates to parking.
Thank you, Evan. I'd like to point out a couple things. One is on our support document, page 2, it says Dewey Beach. Fee is $3, and actually they voted and upped it to $3.50 recently. So this summer it will be a $3.50 fee, as far as I know, citywide. So make that note. That's for the $3.50 for the 2024 season. I'd also like to just share, it's a little conundrum for me, I guess, to be talking about possibly raising parking fees. Usually we do this during the budget sessions or prior to budget sessions, sometimes, I guess. But we usually come up with a rationale for having to increase fees. And we haven't had that first budget meeting where we've been presented the entirety of the budget and determined that we need all these extra fees. So anyhow, a little conundrum for me, but.
Mayor, I thought 2 meetings ago we decided we weren't doing this.
Well,
because I was told, I was a proponent about it, we're going to talk about parking fees, and I was told we're going to wait for the Rossi study, and then we're going to have a bigger discussion about parking in general in March or April.
Well, and I have that on my agenda planner for exactly what you said, except the time frame for a holistic parking review, if you recall, would be after the Rossi report is in. And therefore, starting probably in May, would be a holistic study of the parking. So you're not wrong at all.
Right, because, okay.
So you're right. You missed some of the conversation, and that was that Tim Bennett's recollection that a couple meetings ago we had decided to wait till after the Rossi report, before we do any of this, and to look at it holistically. But I think, Ed, didn't you jump in there and said you wanted it sooner than that?
I did. I think I was one of the only ones that didn't want to wait on some of these things that could potentially be implemented this season. And I think specifically talking about the parking rates, was a little preemptive in, we knew that Dewey was increasing theirs to $3.50. And in addition, although we've not dived into the details of the budget yet, we have some serious, significantly large expenditures this year. And I think we would be silly to think that we're not going to have to raise more money coming into this new budget season to pay for everything that we need to. And I just didn't want to be ignorant to the fact that that's reality. And if we're talking about raising,
I don't disagree with you.
If we're talking about raising taxes and other sources of revenue, I certainly don't want to raise property taxes without also considering raising fees on more things that are driven by tourism. So that's kind of where I was coming from that comment.
You know, I believe we need to not wait necessarily for the holistic parking discussion starting in May. I think that there is an opportunity now to look at this, because I think we all know what we're going to be hit with in the budget, and that is dire need for extra revenue and funding. Not for anything that's whims or so. We need to cover our medical expense. Just everything is just going up, and there'll be more detail of that at the 2 o'clock budget meeting. But I mean, I find it interesting that if you followed, like I have over the years, the increase in parking fees with Dewey Beach, whenever they increase and go higher than us, then their employees and visitors park over in Rehoboth and walk to Dewey Beach. Why? Because they can save $4 a day, $5 a day or something. So, I mean, that may be an impetus to go to $3.50 an hour. I don't know. But what?
$5 an hour.
Well, you said that 2 years ago.
But this is my point. We all know that we're going to have challenges coming up with the budget. I mean, we've talked about that. But my frustration is 2 months ago, I brought this up, and I had no support, and we were moving on and waiting until 2025. Once again, kick the can down the road, because we did that last year as well. And all the other municipalities have extended their seasons. They've raised their rates, and we're the best deal on the coast. But now all of a sudden, maybe we should raise them. So I support raising them, but I just think this was, it's just a waste of time, I think, we could have done this 2 months ago.
I don't disagree with you. I think you and I were the only ones that wanted to make changes. And if no one else wants to make changes, that's fine. I wanted to be realistic about the fact that we're going to have serious problems trying to figure out how to fund everything that needs to be funded this year.
I completely agree with all you've said except the timing. If we go to X for the 2024 season, we don't know, because we have not yet had the budget meetings. We don't know how bad it is. We don't know, Tim, if it really should be $5, $6, $7. I don't know that. So to me, it boils down to, do you raise it in 2024 in anticipation, and then again may have to raise it in 2025? You raise it once, you raise it twice, or we just come to a philosophy. We raise our parking fees from here on out every year with justification. We haven't taken that interim step. Right. So I don't know if 5 is right. I don't know if 4 is.
I don't know if it's right either. I mean, I'm being flip about it, but it's just, we need to, I think we all realize we need to do something, but I thought the decision was we were waiting.
Well, I've always tended to desire incremental increases rather than wait, and all of a sudden you go up $2 or $3 an hour kind of a thing. But my other concern has always been timing, and that we've got to change meters, which is all electronic, but we've got our parking maps, and we've got any of our other literature, the chamber's things. That's always been my concern. Now, this being on today's agenda is because Evan has analyzed it, and any changes can be made as long as we vote on them at the February regular meeting. So we don't have much time. If we want to do it, there is a time constraint to it. And again, I always look at what is our rationale. Do we have a good rationale? Goodness, we're building a multi-million-dollar new beach patrol building, and we certainly use money for that. We're expanding the restroom facilities. We're adding family restrooms. We're adding a lot of amenities to our beach.
Well, I think what brought it to my attention, I was one of the individuals that said, well, let's take a look at this holistically. But at the personnel meeting we had several weeks ago, it came to a hard realization that we have a minimum of $500,000 annually increased in healthcare for our staff. So $500,000 is just the tip of the iceberg, I believe. We've also had trouble, or I shouldn't say trouble, challenges recruiting people, keeping people. So it is staff, and I've mentioned this before. We have a CIP for stuff and things to buy and improvements, but we do not have that same concept for development and maintaining and improving our staff. And many of our competing communities offer 100% coverage on medical. We offer 80-20. So, it comes down to just realistic, who's more competitive. So I think that is what has changed my mind, certainly, of looking at this sooner rather than later, because if $500,000 is the first thing that is at the tip of the iceberg, there's a lot more there. The last time we changed hourly rates for parking was in 2018. Went from $2 to $3. In 2015 was the last time we changed permit transferables. We went up $50 from $200 to $250. And I mean, there's a range of it. You can see it in the report, obviously. But to maintain that source of revenue at the same level, plus trying to keep up with requests for additional donations, contributions, healthcare needs, additional staff, additional amenities that our residents and visitors are commanding, the safety of the beach. We have increased the salaries of our lifeguards, which are the key to why people come here is our beach. The cleanliness of the boardwalk, adding additional pickups of trash. I mean, all these things are little, paper cuts at times, but they all add up quickly. And I think that's what's going to be revealed to us in the next 3 to 4 meetings of the budget, which, as a sneak peek, I think Evan Miller has done, and the entire staff has done a great job in putting into realism what we're facing. So I was one of those that said holistically we should look at this, but again, I think that the time has come right now. And I don't think that we should be basing ourselves, well, they did it, so we should do it. We need to set the standard. We have a much larger budget than any of those communities, and we need to look at ourselves not as others, other communities. They certainly can guide us in some regards, but we need to be the leader, not the follower.
I agree, we should move it to where?
You're speaking of dollar amount?
Dollar.
Well, as you said, and I think others, we really don't know at this point. I think you've, Evan, have done some thoughts and revenue that would be generated at $3.50. I think the discussion this afternoon kind of reveal and get into the weeds about that. But I definitely feel that we need to make a move on raising these fees at this budget cycle.
Mayor, is the budget discussion broad enough that this can continue in that meeting?
You have the agenda.
But isn't the only question, is it for 24 or 25 season?
You mean the upcoming season? I think it's for immediate, right?
24.
24, this summer.
But isn't that our only question? We know we're going to increase. We have to. We just don't know to what extreme we're dealing with until we continue on through the budget, through the whole thing. So I don't know what we're talking about other than...
I will say, why do we have to choose? Couldn't it be both?
Exactly.
Increase in 24 and 25?
Yeah.
Costs are going up dramatically. Everybody, we heard specifically the contribution requests that come up, and I was listening to them, and it's like, well, our employee costs have gone up, our cost of materials have gone up, our health insurance have gone up, and with all of those, you could just insert city in all of those. We're all facing increased in costs. So this may be off topic a little bit, but I don't think we have to make a decision this year or next. It may be both years.
Well, we have plenty of time to do what we need to do. Is that what I'm understanding with the infrastructure and the meters, et cetera? Everything's good for a 2024 change. The chamber, 2024 change. Yes, no? I'm getting short-tempered.
Carol Everhart, Rehoboth Dewey Chamber. It's hard to support increasing the fees, okay? That's a very hard thing to support. However, you sound like my businesses. The cost of everything's going up. You've got to find a way to cover it for not only your residents, but the visitors and the businesses. So I think with justification, it would get more support. In other words, we need to know, you need to tell them why. This is what it's going for. And I think you'd have less opposition if you had that answer. So what you're discussing is pretty important.
And a new dollar amount for parking will be included in all your materials.
Well, the visitor guide is at the printer, okay? It's already online in page Turner form on our website, and it's due in 2 weeks. That doesn't mean we can't promote it. That just means we've lost that one opportunity, but that doesn't mean we can't promote it. You know, and I'm coming around to my all be consistent and keep it simple. It's going to bite me right now because Dewey is going up. Okay, now they're still offering the free Monday nights, but they did have to increase, and basically the same reasons. So,
they reduced from 3 nights free to 1 night free, correct?
correct. Our nights were Mondays and Wednesdays, but they offer all 3, but now they're just Monday night. So we don't know how that's going to go, but we're going to go forward.
So we'll increase for the 2024 season. And do we put the dollar amount in it in this discussion or this afternoon's discussion?
Well, Commissioner Czerniawski asked if we have the opportunity to talk about this at the budget session. The budget session lists the name of individual departments, but that's specific to individual departments. The way the agenda is written, it's broad so that we can talk about any and everything having to do with the budget. So it may be more fruitful to wait until we have that introductory discussion and look at it broadly and then bring this topic back to the table so that we can determine whether we want to do anything this year or whether we want to just try to justify an increase based upon our conversation during the budget meeting. So that, I think, would be my suggestion.
I think that makes sense.
That sounds great.
All righty. So it gets us out of here a little sooner. Anybody else on this side? Any members of the public? Yes, ma'am. Now, remember, we're going to be talking about this later, too, but is this specific to parking fees?
Yes. Cindy Lovett, 4 Canal Street. I really wish we could find another way to meet these costs other than parking because Route 1 looms out there for our businesses and our visitors. There is a whole group of people that comes into town and uses our facilities that don't contribute to parking, don't contribute in any way. And they're the buses and the Ubers and the bicycles that all come in and don't pay anything for parking. And I don't know how you could correct that, but if there was some way we could perhaps tap into that, I think that'd be a great idea. That's all.
Thank you. That's a challenge. Thank you, Cindy. Okay, well, nobody else want to speak? We'll go that route and defer this topic further to the afternoon budget talks. With that, we'll go to the next item of new business, which is G, discuss appointing Jay Legree and reappointing James Little and William Pearlstein to the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee is described in the charter. It has 3 members on it. And we have one, Jim Horty Senior, I think, stepped down from it. And with that, Jay offered to take his place. He has sat on that committee before, I think, before he was commissioner. And so I would like to nominate Jay Legree and then reappoint James Little and William Pearlstein at our next voting meeting. The reason that I say reappointing is because the members have to be reappointed on an annual basis. Are there any questions?
No.
Sounds great.
No. Anybody from the public? With that, we'll go to the next item of new business is discuss city involvement. Excuse me. Discuss city involvement in a Rehoboth Beach Main Street sponsored post office revitalization committee and possible appointment of a commissioner as a liaison to the committee if desired. This is an introductory discussion. I think, Cindy, you kind of hinted at something before. I'm not sure whether you're going to give an introduction to this or Patrick is.
I can start, and Cindy certainly helped me out here. I was approached by Cindy a couple months ago with a program that she's dubbed at this moment Beyond Flowers. I think her main hat that she's been wearing is Rehoboth in Bloom. But again, there was some discussion about it or mention of it at the contribution hearings were presented last week or 2 weeks ago. So this is a target project modeled after the basis of Rehoboth in Bloom, but this focus would be our post office in downtown Rehoboth. Some of you may remember, I think it's been about 12 years ago, that the Lewis post office was rehabilitated, cleaned up, just brought back to its original glory. And we too here in Rehoboth have a post office that gets a lot of use, and it's been showing its wear. And I think some new individuals that have come into town, and the phrase that Cindy had related was they see Rehoboth we see Rehoboth with our heart, they see Rehoboth with their eyes, and to really take a hard look at what the building is looking like and what it is representing to our visitors, our residents, who go in there quite frequently, and even the working conditions that some of the staff go in with. So there is a move afoot to really focus on rehabbing the post office. There's been discussion with the local postmaster, and they are supportive of that. There's also been discussions with the historic preservation planner here in Delaware, Historic Preservation Office, that there is some merit to look at the building, to look at a historic preservation of the building and designate it under historic preservation place. It does possess, I have to look at my cheat note here, the mural, if you've ever noticed while you're standing in line there's a mural that was part of the WPA project in 1940. It was painted by Carl Naths, K-N-A-T-H-S, and which was commissioned by the Federal Treasury section of the Fine Arts Commission. So there is a lot of history in the building, and as we all mature, we need a little polishing up and help occasionally. So that's really the purpose of this. As I understand it, and Cindy, please help me out here if any, it is a totally independent committee. They're looking for fundraising from other sources for development of this. There may be some state money, federal money to help with this also, but it is a project that is, I believe, very necessary, and I think it would certainly add to the beauty of our downtown.
Thank you, Patrick. Yes, you stated it very well. The project is slow going. We are scheduling a meeting with Dan Parsons right now from the Sussex County Historical Association. Our dream, our goal is to get it on the National Historic List of Historic or Register of Historic Places. And I thought it would be made sense to have a liaison from the commission so that we don't have to keep coming to you and telling you what's going on and keep you abreast. We'd have one person who would be our conduit for information. And I happened to meet Patrick when I was exercising one day, and we got talking about it, and he was excited to take it on. So that's why I thought it'd be a good idea to have a liaison, and that's how that was born.
So this is a liaison position, not a board position.
No, correct,
Right.
correct. Just a communication conduit, if you want to put it that way. But our post office was built in 1937, and there's so much original parts to the post office. It's pretty, but this is going to be a much larger project than Lewis's, because if I'm correct, they only did the outside of the building. We are talking total renovation, inside, outside, and maybe ADA compliant, which would be great.
I would suggested that needs to be
Absolutely.
mandatory.
I'm not sure, how that's going to happen, but that's why there will be, I guess, if we get on the historic registry, the next step would be a preservation architect would come in, look at the building, to figure out the project and figure out how to make it ADA compliant without affecting it. But it's funny, when I talked to one person said to me, whatever you do, don't take down those holly bushes. The next person said, oh my God, get rid of those holly bushes. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but that's way down the road.
Cindy, normally I would, if you mentioned a liaison, I would have gone to Ed because he's the liaison for
Correct.
Main Street. And I did talk with Ed, and you're fine with Patrick, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to, I think this project is significant enough that they're going to have a special committee.
Correct.
And I think that it's a large enough project that if we want to have a dedicated person just to liaise with, I don't know what involvement or the city will or should have, but even if it's just one of being informed and keeping us up to
Right.
date.
Communication.
Yeah, I think it's valid, and I know historic preservation is a particular passion of Patrick, so I think it makes sense.
Sounds
Right.
good.
And actually, this project is beyond the design committee. It's above the design committee. This is Susie Martin, who is our vice president, very capable and excited about handling this. She was looking forward to the project. She's going to be the one to manage it from Main Street. I'm planning to step back because I've got enough going. So.
Okay. Well, I put this on the agenda because our normal process for liaisons is that they are appointed by this body. And so I'll put it on the February meeting for consideration or vote, Patrick.
We don't even have to use the word liaison, just coordinator, or, if that makes life easier for people, I'm fine with that.
Well, it helps for label them a liaison because there's a place for it on the regular meeting agendas.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All righty,
everyone.
thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Patrick. With that, are there any members of the public who wanted to say anything on that? Nope. With that, we'll go to commissioner announcements or comments. Does anybody have anything? Nope. Review future meeting dates. Today, 2 o'clock is budget meeting number 2. Friday, February 16th, budget meeting number 3 at 9 o'clock a.m. Also, Friday, February 16th, the regular meeting is at 2 o'clock p.m. With that, we'll go to citizen comment.
Sorry, Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Just as a follow-up, and I know these are posted, but as being chair of the Personnel Committee and the city manager search, just for future meeting dates to confirm, Monday, March 11th, Monday, March 18th, and Tuesday, April 2nd are dates that the city manager search process will be taking place. I think everybody's got them on their calendars, but I just want to make sure.
Sure, and those, for members of the public, those are special meetings where we meet in the public, but then we'll reconvene in executive session for that process. Any citizen comments? No, if not, thank you very much. See you at 2 o'clock today in this room for budget meeting number 2. Thank you all.
Adjourn.